At Morixa Tales, we believe in the power of storytelling. Our scripts weave together deep emotions and dramatic turns to deliver justice where it is most needed. Experience captivating mysteries where the truth eventually shines through, leaving a lasting impact on your heart and mind.
My husband walked into court and asked the judge to take control of everything I owned. My savings, my father's house, every dollar he had spent 40 years building. He said calmly to the judge, "She's no longer capable of managing money." A few people in the courtroom even nodded. But right then, my lawyer suddenly stood up. "Your Honor, there's one document in this file that needs to be read again." The judge turned to the court clerk. "Read that part again." And in that moment, I saw my husband's face suddenly turn pale. "Thank you for being here. Seriously, it means the world. Tell me, what country or city are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story has traveled. Comment below. Fair warning. Some details here are dramatized for storytelling purposes. Names and locations, purely fictional. But the lessons about protecting yourself really valuable and worth remembering. I never thought my 7-year marriage would collapse because of a text message at 2:47 a.m. The buzzing pulled me from sleep, that insistent vibration that means something's wrong. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, squinting against the blue light burning my eyes in the darkness. The notification made my heart stop. Columbia Bank Alert transaction of $125,000. 00 has been processed from your savings account ending in 4892. If this was not you, contact us immediately. My hands shook as I read it again. $125,000. The inheritance from Dad. The money he'd spent 40 years saving penny by penny as a high school math teacher in Southeast Portland. The nest egg he'd left me 6 months ago with a handwritten note. "Rachel, use this wisely. I trust you." I bolted upright, fumbling to dial the emergency number on the back of my debit card. The automated voice asked me to verify my identity, social security number, address, mother's maiden name, each second dragging like hours. Finally, a human voice, tired, professional, sympathetic. "Ms. Hayes, I see the transaction here. It was initiated at 2:31 a.m. from a mobile banking app registered under your name." "That's impossible," I said, my voice cracking. "I've been asleep. I didn't authorize anything. The device ID matches one previously verified through two-factor authentication. Do you share your account access with anyone?" "David." My stomach dropped. "My husband has trusted contact access," I whispered, "but only for emergencies. He wouldn't—" "I'm placing a fraud hold on your account immediately, ma'am. We'll need you to come into a branch first thing in the morning to file a formal dispute. In the meantime, I recommend checking all devices for unauthorized software." The call ended. I sat frozen in bed listening to David's steady breathing beside me. He slept peacefully, one arm tucked under his pillow, his face relaxed. The same man who'd held me through Dad's funeral 3 weeks ago, who'd whispered, "I've got you, Rach. We'll get through this together." I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs to the kitchen, my laptop sitting where I'd left it on the counter. I opened it, the screen glowed to life, and scanned the applications folder. Most were familiar: Chrome, Spotify, Adobe, but they're tucked between System Utilities was something I didn't recognize. System Update version 2.7. Last active today, 2:28 a.m. I clicked it. A loading bar appeared, then nothing, just a blank window. My mind raced back 6 months to September. David had asked to borrow my laptop one evening. "Mine's updating," he'd said. "Yours is running slow though, babe. Want me to optimize it?" I'd handed it over without a second thought. I felt sick. I walked into the living room trying to steady my breathing, and that's when I saw it. A legal-sized yellow envelope on the coffee table, half buried under a stack of sympathy cards I hadn't had the strength to open. The return address read, Multnomah County Circuit Court, Portland, Oregon. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. The document inside was dense with legal jargon, but the header screamed at me in bold letters. In the Circuit Court of the State of Oregon for the County of Multnomah petition for conservatorship of the estate, in the matter of Rachel Ann Hayes, respondent petitioner, David James Hayes. I scanned the pages, my vision blurring. Words jumped out. Unable to manage financial affairs, cognitive impairment, risk of exploitation, requests appointment as conservator, and there at the bottom, hearing date, March 18th, 2024, 9 a.m. Notice served 72 hours prior. I checked the date on my phone, March 15th. That gave me 3 days. 3 days before my own husband would stand in front of a judge and argue that I was incompetent to manage the money my father had left me. The room spun. I sank onto the couch, clutching the petition like it might disappear if I let go. My mind raced through the last few weeks, David's sudden interest in helping with the estate paperwork, his insistence that I add him as a trusted contact on my bank accounts, just in case, the way he'd encouraged me to take time off work after Dad's death. You need to rest, Rach. Let me handle the logistics. I'd thought he was being supportive. I'd thought he loved me. The sympathy cards stared up at me from the coffee table, their hallmark condolences now feeling like cruel jokes. Thinking of you during this difficult time. May you find peace and comfort. You are in our prayers. My father had trusted me with his life savings, and I'd trusted David with everything. Upstairs, the floorboards creaked. David was awake. I looked down at the petition in my hands, then at the $125,000 alert still glowing on my phone screen. I thought about the system update on my laptop, the two-factor authentication, the court hearing in 72 hours. David, my husband, the man I trusted most in this world, the man who was trying to steal my inheritance, the man who'd been planning this for months. I heard his footsteps on the stairs. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. I slid the petition back into the envelope and shoved it under a couch cushion. When David appeared in the doorway, yawning and squinting, I forced myself to smile. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice thick with sleep. "What are you doing up?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. "Couldn't sleep," I said quietly, "just thinking about Dad." He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me. I stood rigid, every muscle screaming to pull away. "I know it's hard," he murmured into my hair, "but I'm here. I'll always be here for you." Liar. When he finally went back to bed, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I need a lawyer, right now. By 8 o'clock the next morning, I was sitting in Nathaniel Parker's office in downtown Portland, watching rain streak down the floor-to-ceiling windows behind his desk. I'd found him through a frantic 3 a.m. Google search, Emergency Conservatorship Lawyer, Portland, Oregon. His website had been professional but warm, promising protection for families in crisis. I'd left a voicemail at 3:17 a.m., voice shaking, barely coherent. He'd called me back at 6:45. "I can see you at 8, he'd said simply. "Bring everything." Now I sat across from him, clutching the yellow envelope and my phone with the bank alert still glowing on the screen. Nathaniel Parker looked exactly like his photo, mid-40s, graying at the temples, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of steady presence that made you feel like maybe things might be okay. He read through David's petition in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finally looked up, his eyes were sharp. "Your husband is requesting conservatorship of the estate only," he said, tapping the document, "not guardianship of your person. He's not claiming you need help with medical decisions or daily living. He's specifically targeting your finances." "What does that mean?" "It means he knows exactly what he's doing." Nathaniel leaned back in his chair. "If he'd asked for full guardianship, he'd have to prove you can't function independently, can't work, can't make basic decisions. That's a much higher bar. But by limiting his request to the estate, he only needs to convince a judge you can't manage money safely." My stomach twisted. Can he do that? He's going to try. Nathaniel gestured to the petition. "He's claiming you're suffering from grief-related cognitive impairment following your father's death, that you're vulnerable to financial exploitation, that you need someone conveniently him to protect your inheritance." That's insane. I'm a graphic designer. I run my own freelance business. I've been managing my own finances since I was 22. "I believe you. But David's betting a judge won't have time to verify that in a 72-hour emergency hearing. He paused. Tell me about the bank alert. I showed him my phone and explained everything the 2:31 a.m. transaction, the system update app, the way David had offered to optimize my laptop 6 months ago. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. That wasn't optimization. That was a keylogger. A what? Spyware. Software that records everything you type, passwords, bank information, emails. He's been monitoring you for 6 months, Rachel, probably waiting for the right moment. He leaned forward. When did your father pass? September, 6 months ago. And when did the money from his estate clear into your account? I thought back. October, about $125,000 from his life insurance and savings. So David installed the keylogger, waited until the inheritance hit your account, then filed for conservatorship. Nathaniel's voice was flat clinical. This wasn't impulsive. This was premeditated. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. But I have something, I said, pulling a folded paper from my purse. My hands shook as I unfolded it. Dad had me sign this in 2018. He said it was important. Nathaniel took the document, and for the first time I saw his expression shift relief, maybe even hope. This is an advanced designation of conservator, he said quietly. Did your father have an attorney draft this? Yes. He was very deliberate about it. He said if anything ever happened, if I ever needed help, he wanted to make sure I chose who that help came from. Nathaniel read aloud. I, Michael Hayes, being of sound mind, do hereby designate my daughter, Rachel Ann Hayes, as my sole and exclusive conservator, should such appointment become necessary. This designation supersedes any other claims or petitions. He looked up at me. This is gold, Rachel, under Oregon Revised Statutes 125.055. An advanced designation has priority over all other petitions, including those from family members. Unless David can prove your father was incompetent when he signed this, which he can't, since it was drafted 6 years ago by a licensed attorney, this document legally blocks his claim. So I'm safe. Not yet. His tone sobered. David knows about this document. He has to, you're married. Which means he's planning to argue you're currently unfit to serve as your own conservator, regardless of your father's wishes. He'll need evidence of that. What kind of evidence? Medical records, psychological evaluations, testimony from people who've witnessed concerning behavior. Nathaniel pulled out a legal pad and started writing. We need to move fast. I'm filing an objection to his petition today, requesting the court appoint a guardian ad litem. A what? An independent investigator appointed by the judge to evaluate what's really in your best interest. They'll interview you, interview David, review the evidence. It's standard in contested conservatorships. He kept writing. I'm also requesting an emergency order to freeze all joint accounts and place your inheritance under court supervision pending the hearing. Will that stop David from taking more money? It'll stop anyone from touching it, including you, but it's better than letting him drain the account. He picked up his phone and dialed. I'm also calling in a favor. Someone answered. Nathaniel spoke quickly. James, it's Nate Parker. I need a financial background check on a David Hayes Portland resident, married, likely carrying significant debt. I need everything in 24 hours. He paused, listening. Yes, I know it's tight. Bill me triple if you have to. This is urgent. He hung up and met my eyes. If David is desperate enough to steal $125,000 at 2 a.m, he's desperate enough to commit perjury in court. We need to know why. What's driving him? Gambling, debts, failed business affair. The word affair hit me like a slap. I'd been so focused on the money I hadn't even considered. I don't know, I whispered. I thought I knew him. That's what he's counting on. Nathaniel's voice softened. Rachel, I need you to understand something. In 2 days, you're going to walk into that courtroom and face your husband. He's going to stand in front of a judge and say things about you, terrible things designed to make you look incompetent, unstable, unfit. You need to be ready for that. I don't know if I can. You can, because the alternative is letting him win. He slid the petition back across the desk. David made one critical mistake. He underestimated you. He thought you'd be too grief-stricken, too trusting, too passive to fight back. He thought he had 72 hours to waltz into court and take everything. And now, Nathaniel smiled a cold, determined smile. Now he's got 48 hours to explain to a judge why he's trying to steal from his own wife. And trust me, we're going to make every second count. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Morning, babe. Running errands. Home by noon. Love you. I stared at the words, feeling nothing but a hollow ache where love used to live. He doesn't know you're here, does he? Nathaniel asked. No. Good. Keep it that way. Go home. Act normal. Don't confront him. Don't let him know you've found the petition. We need him to think he's still in control. I nodded, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Nathaniel stood, extending his hand. Rachel, I've been practicing conservatorship law for 18 years. I've seen financial abuse, exploitation, manipulation, all of it. But I've also seen people fight back and win. You're going to win. I shook his hand, wanting desperately to believe him. As I left his office, rain still falling outside, one question echoed in my mind. Why is David so desperate that he'd risk everything? Our marriage, his reputation, possibly even jail time for my father's money I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out. 48 hours before the hearing, Nathaniel called me back to his office. When I walked in, his desk was buried under manila folders, printouts, and highlighted documents, a paper trail of my husband's secret life. Sit down, he said quietly. You're going to want to be sitting for this. James Wilson, the private investigator, stood by the window, a wiry man in his 50s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. He nodded at me, then slid a folder across Nathaniel's desk. Mrs. Hayes, James began. I've been doing financial investigations for 23 years. I've tracked down hidden assets, offshore accounts, money laundering operations. But your husband, he shook his head. He's not hiding money. He's drowning in debt. Nathaniel opened the folder. David owes $480,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. That's not possible. It's very possible. Nathaniel pulled out a spreadsheet. Here's the breakdown: business debt, $285,000. David quit his job at Intel 2 years ago to launch a tech startup called Streamlink, some kind of networking platform. He poured in his savings, maxed out business credit lines, took loans from investors. The company folded 8 months ago. Creditors are circling. I stared at the numbers. David had told me Streamlink was on hold, that he was freelancing while he refined the product. I'd believed him. Credit card debt, $125,000 spread across 5 cards. James pointed to another page. Chase Amex Discover, Capital One City, all maxed out. Minimum payments alone are running him $4,000 a month. He's been juggling them, paying one with another. That's textbook debt spiral. Personal loans, $70,000 from payday lenders and peer-to-peer platforms. Interest rates between 18% and 35%. These are predatory loans, Mrs. Hayes, the kind desperate people take when banks won't touch them anymore. I felt nauseous. How did I not know? He's been routing everything through accounts you don't have access to, Nathaniel said gently. You kept your finances mostly separate after marriage, correct? We had a joint checking for household bills, but our savings were separate. Dad always taught me to maintain financial independence. My voice cracked. I thought I was being smart. You were, Nathaniel said firmly. That separation is the only reason David had to file for conservatorship, instead of just draining your accounts directly. James cleared his throat. There's more. 3 weeks ago, David transferred $25,000 to a woman named Elena Rodriguez. She's 29, owns a hair salon called Elegance Hair Studio in Beaverton. He slid a photo across the desk surveillance footage of David outside a sleek salon, his arm around a petite woman with long, dark hair. They were laughing. She was kissing his cheek. They've been seeing each other for 10 months, James said flatly. Started last May, right around when his business collapsed. He told her he was separated from you, that the divorce was almost final. He's been funding renovations to her salon, new equipment, marketing, staffing. She thinks they're business partners. I couldn't breathe. 10 months. While I was nursing Dad through his final illness, sitting by his hospital bed planning his funeral, David was building a new life with someone else. "So this isn't just about money," I whispered. "He wants to leave me." "He wants to leave you debt-free," Nathaniel corrected. "Your father's inheritance isn't enough to cover what David owes $580,000 in assets against $480,000 in debt, only leaves him $100,000. That's not enough for a fresh start with Elena." "But the house," James interjected, pointing to another document. "Your father's house in Laurelhurst is worth $380,000, fully paid off. If David gets conservatorship of your estate, he can petition the court to sell that house, claiming it's in your best interest to liquidate assets. The proceeds go into the conservatorship account which he controls." Nathaniel leaned forward. "That's his real target, Rachel. Not just the $125,000 in savings. He wants the house. That gives him enough to pay off his debts, walk away clean, and start over with Elena. Can he do that, sell Dad's house without my consent, if he's appointed your conservator? Yes. Oregon law gives conservators broad authority to manage assets, including real estate sales, as long as they claim it's for the protected person's benefit." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He'd argue you can't maintain a house in your impaired state, that liquidating it provides financial security. A judge might approve it. I felt like I was falling. "My father built that house. We lived there my whole childhood. He left it to me in his will." "I know." Nathaniel's voice was soft. "That's why we're going to stop David." James pulled out another set of photos, grainy surveillance shots of David at a Starbucks sliding an envelope across a table to a woman in a business suit. "2 days ago, your husband met someone at the Starbucks on Burnside. He handed over an envelope. We followed up, it contained $5,000 cash." "Who was she?" "We're still identifying her, but the timing is interesting." Nathaniel flipped open David's petition to a tabbed page. Exhibit C submitted with his conservatorship request a psychological evaluation signed by Dr. Lisa Walker, PSYD. It claims you underwent a comprehensive assessment on March 10th, 5 days ago, and were found to have significant cognitive impairment, poor judgment, and inability to manage finances. I never saw any Dr. Lisa Walker. I haven't seen a therapist since college. I know. Nathaniel pulled up the Oregon Health Authority website on his laptop, typing into the physician database. I checked the state licensing board. Watch. He entered Lisa Walker, psychologist. The screen blinked, no records found. He tried Lisa Walker, Portland. No records found. There is no doctor. Lisa Walker, licensed to practice psychology in Oregon, Nathaniel said quietly. I expanded the search to Washington, California, Idaho, the entire West Coast. Nothing. This psychologist doesn't exist. The room seemed to tilt. David submitted a fake report. He paid $5,000 for someone to create it, James said. We don't have proof yet that the woman at Starbucks wrote it, but the timing fits. And fraudulent documents in a court filing. He whistled low. That's not just civil misconduct, that's a crime. Nathaniel closed the laptop. If we can prove David knowingly submitted forged evidence to the court, he's facing criminal charges, forgery, perjury, fraud upon the court. We're talking felony territory, 5 to 10 years in prison. But we have to prove it, I said slowly, in court, tomorrow. Not tomorrow, day after tomorrow. The hearing is March 18th. Nathaniel checked his watch. We have 48 hours to build an airtight case. James is tracking down the woman from Starbucks. I'm subpoenaing David's financial records and deposing him under oath. And you, he slid a legal pad toward me, you need to write down every detail you remember about your father's advance designation, every conversation about your finances, every moment David had access to your laptop. We're going to dismantle his lies piece by piece. I looked at the photo of David and Elena at the fake psychological report at the mountain of debt burying the man I'd married. He really did this, I whispered. He planned it for months. The keylogger, the conservatorship petition, the fake evaluation, all of it. Yes, Nathaniel said. And now we're going to prove it. James picked up his phone. I'll have more by tonight. If that woman surfaces, we'll find her. As they continued strategizing, one thought echoed through my mind. How do we prove something in 48 hours that David spent 6 months carefully constructing? I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew with a cold certainty that everything I'd built with my father, his home, his legacy, his trust in me, was hanging in the balance, and David was betting I'd lose. 24 hours before the hearing, Nathaniel and I sat in his office dissecting the 12-page psychological evaluation, the report I'd never known existed until David filed it with the court. It looked official at first glance. Professional letterhead, clinical language, a signature at the bottom with Psy-D typed beneath it. But as Nathaniel turned each page, his expression darkened. "This is garbage," he said finally. "Sophisticated garbage, but garbage nonetheless." He spread the pages across his desk like a crime scene. Look at the conclusion here. Patient exhibits severe memory impairment, diminished capacity for financial judgment, and vulnerability to exploitation. Recommendation: full conservatorship of estate required to protect patient from self-harm and external predation. That's not me, I whispered. I've never had memory problems. I run a business. I manage client deadlines, invoicing contracts. I know, but David's betting the judge won't have time to verify that in an emergency hearing. He's hoping this report signed by a supposed doctor will be enough. Nathaniel pulled out a yellow legal pad. Let me show you why it won't hold up. He began listing his pen, moving quickly. First, no specific interview date or time. A legitimate psychological evaluation always documents when the assessment occurred. This just says, March 2024. That's not how professionals work. They note, patient interviewed March 10, 2024, 2 to 4 p.m. Exact timestamps. This has nothing. I leaned closer, scanning the pages. He was right. It was vague, like someone had written it without ever meeting me. Second, no standardized test results. When a psychologist evaluates cognitive function, they use validated instruments MM, SEM, OC, AWAIS-4. These tests produce numerical scores that can be verified and compared to population norms. This report, he tapped the page, it mentions clinical observation and interview-based assessment but provides zero quantitative data. No scores, no charts, nothing measurable. Could a real psychologist do an evaluation without tests? Technically, yes, but not for something as serious as conservatorship. Courts want hard evidence. A competent evaluator would document everything. He flipped to the signature page, which brings me to point 3, no license number or professional stamp. He pulled up the Oregon Health Authority website again, zooming in on a sample licensed psychologist's report. See this, every legitimate report includes the provider's license number, usually right under their signature. It's legally required for any document submitted to court or insurance. Doctor, Lisa Walker's report, nothing. Just a typed name. I stared at the signature, looping, confident, utterly meaningless. Fourth, template language. Nathaniel highlighted several phrases. Look at this patient demonstrates significant impairment. Recommendation: conservatorship required. These are boilerplate phrases you'd find in any sample report online. A real clinician tailors their language to the individual. They describe specific behaviors, quote, the patient directly provide narrative context. This reads like someone copied from a template and filled in your name. He was right. The more I read, the more generic it felt, like a form letter with my details plugged in. And fifth, the most damning evidence: Dr. Lisa Walker doesn't exist. Not in Oregon, not in any neighboring state. I've checked every database. If she were licensed anywhere in the U.S., she'd appear in the National Register of Health Service Psychologists. She's not there. So David paid someone to write this, I said slowly. Someone who knew enough to make it look real but didn't actually have credentials. Exactly. And that $5,000 cash payment James photographed, I'd bet my career that's what it was for. Nathaniel leaned back. Here's what I think happened. David knew about your father's advanced designation. He knew it legally blocked his conservatorship petition. The only way around it was to prove you were currently unfit, so impaired that even your father's prior wishes couldn't protect you. So he manufactured evidence. He had to. Without medical proof of incapacity, his petition is dead in the water. But with an official-looking psychological report, he could argue to the judge, yes, her father designated her 6 years ago. But look, she's deteriorated since then. She needs protection now. The calculation of it made me feel sick. David hadn't just betrayed me, he'd constructed an elaborate lie paid for false evidence and submitted it under oath to a court. Can we prove he knew it was fake? I asked. That's the challenge. He could claim ignorance, say he hired someone he believed was legitimate. Nathaniel drummed his fingers on the desk. But the $5,000 cash payment helps. Why pay cash unless you're hiding something? And James is tracking down the woman from Starbucks. If we can identify her, link her to the report, and prove she has no credentials, we've got him. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. That's Miller, the cybersecurity expert I called. She just finished examining your laptop. He put the phone on speaker. Miller, I've got Rachel here. What did you find? A crisp professional voice came through. Mr. Parker, the device has a keylogger installed, specifically a program called Stealth Monitor Pro. It's been active since September 15, 2023. That's 6 months ago. The software captures every keystroke, screenshot, and password entered. All data was being transmitted to an external email dh.secure2023.protonmail.com. My stomach dropped. DH David Hayes. Almost certainly, Miller confirmed. Proton Mail is an encrypted service popular for privacy, or in this case, hiding activity. The software also logged her banking app usage, including the 2-factor authentication code sent to her phone. That's how he accessed her account at 2:31 a.m. without triggering additional security. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Can you testify to this in court tomorrow? Absolutely. I've documented everything: screenshots, metadata, transmission logs. It's airtight. Thank you, Miller. I'll send over the subpoena within the hour. He hung up and looked at me. Rachel David didn't just commit financial fraud. He committed a computer crime under Oregon Revised Statutes 164, 377 unauthorized access to a protected computer system. That carries up to 5 years, and if we tie it to the federal bank fraud, it becomes an 18 U.S.C. Section 1030 violation that's up to 10 years. So if we prove the fake report and the keylogger, he's looking at a decade in prison minimum, plus civil penalties, restitution, and a permanent criminal record. Nathaniel's expression was grim. But we have to prove it. Tomorrow, in front of Judge Franklin. I stared at the fake report, the advance designation from my father, the stack of evidence Nathaniel had assembled. How do we do that? David's lawyer will argue the report is legitimate unless we can prove otherwise, and we don't even know who wrote it yet. Nathaniel smiled a small, knowing smile. Actually, we do. James identified the woman from Starbucks an hour ago, and I've arranged for a surprise witness, who you'll see tomorrow. He stood gathering the documents. Rachel David built this fraud carefully, but he made one critical mistake. He underestimated how much people will fight for the truth. Your father trusted you for a reason. Tomorrow we show the court why. I looked at the report one more time, the fake signature, the fabricated diagnosis, the lies designed to strip away everything my father had left me. Tomorrow, I echoed. Tomorrow the fight began. The morning of March 18, 2024, I walked into the Multnomah County Circuit Court in downtown Portland. The building loomed gray and imposing against the overcast sky, a fortress of justice that suddenly felt like a battleground. It had been 6 months since Dad's funeral. 6 months since I'd stood in a church pew, numb with grief, while David held my hand and promised we'd get through it together. Now I was walking into courtroom 4B to fight that same man for everything my father had left me. Nathaniel walked beside me, his briefcase heavy with evidence. Remember, he said quietly as we approached the courtroom doors, stay calm. Answer only what's asked. Don't let Morrison provoke you. And David, don't look at him unless you have to. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. No jury box, just 2 tables facing a raised bench, wooden pews for observers, and fluorescent lights that made everything feel sterile and cold. David sat at the left table with his attorney, Stephen Morrison, a man in his early 50s with silver hair and a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. David wore a navy suit I'd never seen before. His hands were folded on the table, his posture rigid. When I walked in, his eyes flicked toward me for a fraction of a second, then away. No recognition, no remorse. Just a stranger in a suit. I sat beside Nathaniel at the right table, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The bailiff stood. All rise. The Multnomah County Circuit Court is now in session, the Honorable Judge Robert Franklin presiding. Judge Franklin entered a man in his late 50s with steel gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of face that had seen every lie, every scheme, every desperate plea imaginable. He settled into his chair and surveyed the room with the detached efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Be seated. His voice was deep, authoritative. He opened a folder. A case number 24-CV-12458 in the matter of Rachel Ann Hayes, petitioner David James Hayes, respondent Rachel Ann Hayes. This is a hearing on an emergency petition for conservatorship of the estate. He looked up, his gaze sharp. Mr. Morrison, you filed this petition. Proceed with your opening statement. Morrison stood smoothing his tie. His voice was measured, almost sympathetic. Thank you, Your Honor, my client, Mr. David Hayes comes before this court out of genuine concern for his wife's well-being. 6 months ago, Mrs. Hayes suffered the tragic loss of her father, Michael Hayes, a loss that has understandably taken a profound emotional toll. I felt my jaw tighten. He was already painting me as fragile. In the aftermath of this loss, Mrs. Hayes inherited approximately $580,000, a substantial sum that includes liquid assets, real property, and life insurance proceeds. While my client respects his wife's grief, he has observed troubling signs that she is not equipped to manage such a significant estate safely. Morrison lifted the psychological report like it was gospel. Your Honor, we have submitted expert testimony from Dr. Lisa Walker, a licensed clinical psychologist who conducted a comprehensive evaluation of Mrs. Hayes. Dr. Lisa Walker's findings indicate severe memory impairment, diminished financial judgment, and vulnerability to exploitation. Based on this professional assessment, my client respectfully requests appointment as conservator of the estate, not to control his wife, but to protect her from financial harm during this vulnerable period. He sat down, the report resting prominently on the table. Judge Franklin turned to Nathaniel. Mr. Parker, you represent the respondent. Your opening statement. Nathaniel rose, his posture relaxed, but his eyes razor sharp. Thank you, Your Honor. Let me be clear, this is not a case about protection. This is a case about theft. Morrison shot to his feet. Objection, counsel, is... Judge Franklin raised a hand. Overruled, Mr. Parker, continue. Nathaniel stepped forward. 3 days ago, at 2:31 a.m. on March 15th, David Hayes attempted to steal $125,000 from his wife's savings account. The transaction was flagged by the bank and frozen, but the intent was clear. He used spyware installed on her laptop 6 months ago to capture her banking credentials. He added his phone number to her 2-factor authentication. He waited until she was asleep, then executed the transfer from his own apartment. I saw David's shoulders stiffen. This was not a misunderstanding, Your Honor. This was premeditated theft facilitated by months of digital surveillance. And when that theft failed, Mr. Hayes filed this emergency conservatorship petition to accomplish legally what he could not accomplish, criminally seizing control of his wife's inheritance. Nathaniel picked up a document from his table. Mrs. Hayes's father, Michael Hayes, anticipated the possibility that his daughter might need protection. In 2018, he executed an advance designation of conservator under Oregon Revised Statutes 125. 055 naming Rachel as the sole person authorized to manage her own affairs if conservatorship ever became necessary. That document was drafted by an attorney witness notarized and filed with the county. It is legally binding. He held it up. David Hayes knows about this document. He knows it blocks his petition. So he did the only thing he could. He manufactured evidence to claim his wife is incompetent. That psychological report from Dr. Lisa Walker. Nathaniel's voice dropped cold. It's a forgery. Dr. Lisa Walker doesn't exist. We can prove it. The courtroom went silent. Morrison stood again, gripping the report like a lifeline. Your Honor, this is outrageous. We have submitted a legitimate psychological evaluation from a licensed professional, Dr. Lisa Walker Psy. D. My client obtained this report in good faith. Judge Franklin's gaze shifted to the document. Mr. Morrison, do you have Dr. Lisa Walker's license number? Morrison hesitated. It should be in the report, Your Honor. Is it? Morrison flipped through the pages, his confidence faltering. I'll need to verify. Nathaniel spoke quietly. It's not there, Your Honor, because Dr. Lisa Walker is not licensed in Oregon or any other state. We've checked every registry. Judge Franklin leaned back, his expression unreadable. Mr. Parker, that's a serious allegation. Can you substantiate it? Yes, Your Honor. With your permission, I'd like to address the validity of this report before we proceed further. Morrison's face flushed. Your Honor, this is a delay tactic. Overruled. Judge Franklin's voice was firm. If the foundational evidence in this case is questionable, we address it now. Mr. Parker, you have the floor. Nathaniel met my eyes for a brief second, a silent message. Here we go. He turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to walk the court through 5 specific reasons why this report cannot be trusted. And then I'd like to introduce evidence that Mr. Hayes paid $5,000 in cash for it. David's head snapped up. Morrison gripped the table. Judge Franklin folded his hands. Proceed. The courtroom fell silent. Nathaniel stood holding a slim folder, a stark contrast to the thick report Morrison had brandished moments earlier. He walked to the center of the room with the calm precision of someone who'd already won. Your Honor, he began. I'd like to start with a simple question. He turned to Morrison. Where is Dr. Lisa Walker? Morrison blinked. I'm sorry. Dr. Lisa Walker, the psychologist who allegedly evaluated my client, the expert whose testimony forms the foundation of Mr. Hayes's entire petition. Where is she? Morrison cleared his throat. Dr. Lisa Walker is unavailable, Your Honor. She has other professional obligations today. Unavailable. Nathaniel nodded slowly. So we're being asked to accept her conclusions without the opportunity to cross-examine her, without verifying her credentials, without asking a single question about her methodology. Judge Franklin leaned forward. Mr. Morrison, is Dr. Lisa Walker aware this hearing is taking place? Yes, Your Honor, she was informed, but she couldn't rearrange her schedule. Hope for a court proceeding. The judge's tone sharpened. This is an emergency conservatorship hearing that could strip someone of their financial autonomy, and your expert witness couldn't make time. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. We believe the written report would suffice. Let's examine that report, Nathaniel interrupted. He pulled out a laptop and connected it to the courtroom's projector. The screen behind the judge flickered to life. With the court's permission, I'd like to demonstrate why, Dr. Lisa Walker's absence is particularly convenient for the petitioner. Judge Franklin gestured. Proceed. Nathaniel opened a web browser and navigated to the Oregon Health Authority website. The home page appeared on the screen. Oregon Health Authority, Health Provider Directory. This is the state's official licensing database, Nathaniel explained. Every healthcare provider in Oregon, physicians, psychologists, nurses, therapists, must be registered here to practice legally. Let me search for Dr. Lisa Walker. He typed into the search bar, Lisa Walker Psychologist. Hit enter. The page loaded. No records found. The courtroom was silent except for the hum of the projector. Morrison stood. Your Honor, perhaps she's licensed in another state. Let's check. Nathaniel opened a new tab, the Washington State Department of Health. Typed the same name. No records found. Another tab. California Board of Psychology. No records found. Idaho. Same result. Nathaniel turned back to the judge. I've searched every state in the Pacific Northwest, Your Honor. I've also checked the National Register of Health Service Psychologists, a database that includes every licensed psychologist in the United States. He pulled up that page too. Dr. Lisa Walker does not exist. Not in Oregon. Not anywhere. Morrison's face had gone pale. Your Honor, I was given this report by my client. I had no reason to believe. You had every reason to verify it, Nathaniel cut in. He picked up David's petition and flipped to the exhibit page. Mr. Morrison, you submitted this document under oath to this court. You certified it as authentic evidence. But look at it. He projected the signature page onto the screen. The signature, Doctor. Lisa Walker's PsyD sat alone at the bottom with no other identifying information. There's no license number, Nathaniel said, pointing. Oregon Revised Statute 675. 825 requires that any psychological report submitted for legal purposes must include the provider's license number. It's not optional, it's the law. This report has nothing. He flipped to another page. No office address, no phone number, no email contact. What legitimate professional submits a forensic evaluation without any way to verify their identity? Morrison opened his mouth, but no words came. Nathaniel continued, his voice measured but relentless. Let me show you the other red flags. First, no interview date or time. A real psychological evaluation documents exactly when the assessment occurred. This says March 2024. That's not a clinical notation, that's a placeholder. He highlighted a section. Second, no standardized test results. Dr. Lisa Walker allegedly found severe memory impairment, but provides no MMSE scores, no MOCA results, no WAIS data. Just vague language. Clinical observation suggests real psychologists provide quantifiable evidence. Another page. Third, generic template language. Look at these phrases. Patient demonstrates significant impairment. Recommendation, conservatorship required. These are boilerplate sentences you'd find in any sample report online. There's no individualized analysis, no direct quotes from the patient, no narrative detail. He paused. Fourth, no contact information. I've tried to reach Dr. Lisa Walker. I called every Lisa Walker listed in Oregon and Washington psychology directories. None of them wrote this report, because the person who did isn't a psychologist. Judge Franklin removed his glasses, cleaning them slowly. Mr. Morrison, did you attempt to verify Dr. Lisa Walker's credentials before submitting this report? Morrison stood stiffly. Your Honor, I trusted my client. He presented the report as legitimate. You're an attorney with over 20 years of experience, the judge said flatly. You know that due diligence requires independent verification of expert witnesses. A 5-minute search on the state licensing board would have revealed what Mr. Parker just showed us. I should have checked, Morrison admitted, his voice tight. But I believed my client was acting in good faith. Good faith doesn't excuse negligence. Judge Franklin turned to Nathaniel. Mr. Parker, you mentioned a $5,000 cash payment. Yes, Your Honor. Nathaniel pulled out a photograph, the surveillance image James had taken at Starbucks. 3 days before this petition was filed, David Hayes met a woman at a coffee shop in southeast Portland. Our investigator observed him handing her an envelope containing $5,000 in cash. He projected the image. There was David, unmistakable, sliding a thick envelope across the table. We believe that payment was for this report, Nathaniel said. A fabricated psychological evaluation purchased from someone willing to commit fraud for the right price. David's lawyer whispered urgently to him, but David sat frozen, staring at the photo. Judge Franklin's expression had shifted from neutral to something colder. Mr. Parker, are you alleging that Mr. Hayes knowingly submitted forged evidence to this court? Yes, Your Honor. And we can prove it. Morrison shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is speculation. My client may have paid for a consultation. A consultation doesn't produce a 12-page forensic report, Nathaniel countered, and consultations don't happen in cash at coffee shops. They happen in offices with contracts, receipts, and licensed professionals. Judge Franklin held up a hand. Enough, Mr. Parker. If you have evidence that this report was purchased fraudulently, I want to see it. Now. Nathaniel smiled a thin, controlled smile. Your Honor, we have more than evidence. We have a witness. The woman who was paid to facilitate this fraud is here, ready to testify. Morrison went rigid. David's head snapped up. Judge Franklin leaned back. You're telling me the person who helped create this fake report is in my courtroom. Not helped create, Your Honor, helped expose. Nathaniel turned toward the gallery. We've been conducting our own investigation with the court's sealed approval. And what we found proves that David Hayes didn't just lie to his wife, he lied to this court. Judge Franklin's gaze was steel. I want to hear from this witness, immediately. Nathaniel nodded to the bailiff. Your Honor, I'd like to call our first witness to the stand. The courtroom doors opened, and every head turned to see who would walk through. Nathaniel didn't call the mystery woman from the hallway. Not yet. Instead, he turned to Judge Franklin with calculated precision. Your Honor, before we address the fraudulent report directly, I'd like to establish the foundation of Mr. Hayes' scheme. With the court's permission, I'm calling 2 expert witnesses to explain exactly how he gained access to my client's finances and how we caught him. Judge Franklin nodded. Proceed. Nathaniel gestured to the bailiff, who set up a video conferencing screen at the front of the courtroom. Within seconds, a man's face appeared mid-40s, clean-cut, wearing a Columbia Bank security badge. Please state your name and position for the record, Nathaniel said. Michael Torres. I'm senior fraud investigator with Columbia Bank's Digital Security Division. I've been with the bank for 14 years, specializing in online banking fraud and unauthorized access cases. Mr. Torres, are you familiar with the account belonging to Rachel Hayes, ending in 4892? Yes. On March 15th at 2:47 a.m., our system flagged an unusual transaction, a transfer of $125,000 initiated at 2:31 a.m. The amount, timing, and location triggered our fraud protocols. What did your investigation reveal? Torres pulled up a screen-share transaction logs with highlighted entries. The transfer was initiated through our mobile banking app, accessed from a device registered under Mrs. Hayes' name. However, the IP address traced to 192.168.1, 73, a residential address in the Pearl District of Portland. Nathaniel held up a document. Your Honor, that address is David Hayes' apartment, not the marital home. Torres continued. Additionally, the 2-factor authentication code was sent to a phone number ending in 5892, also registered to David Hayes. That number had been added to the account 3 weeks prior as a trusted contact. I felt my stomach twist. I remembered that conversation. It was 2 days after Dad's funeral. David had sat beside me on the couch, his voice gentle. Babe, what if something happens and you can't access your accounts? Let me add my number as backup, just in case. I'd been too numb with grief to question it. Mr. Torres. Nathaniel said, how long had you been monitoring this account? 3 weeks. After you filed a protective motion with the court, we placed the account under enhanced surveillance per the judge's order. When the 2:31 a.m. transaction occurred, our system automatically froze it. The money never left Mrs. Hayes' account. Morrison stood. Your Honor, my client may have made an error in judgment, but... An error, Nathaniel's voice cut through. Mr. Torres, in your 14 years investigating fraud, have you ever seen a legitimate account holder initiate a 6-figure transfer at 2:30 in the morning from someone else's apartment? Never. Thank you. No further questions. Torres's screen disappeared, replaced by another face, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and an FBI cybersecurity certification, visible on the wall behind her. Please state your name and credentials. Miller. I'm a certified forensic computer analyst with Data Shield Security. I hold certifications in digital forensics, cybersecurity investigation, and network analysis. I've testified as an expert witness in over 30 criminal and civil cases involving computer crimes. Ms. Miller, did you examine Rachel Hayes' laptop? Yes. On March 16th, per court order, I conducted a comprehensive forensic analysis. She pulled up her own screen share, a technical report with highlighted sections. I found a program installed on September 10, 2023, disguised as System Update version 2.7. It's actually a commercial keylogger called Stealth Monitor Pro. The screen showed lines of code file directories transmission logs. What does a keylogger do? Nathaniel asked, his tone deliberately simple for the judge. It records every keystroke typed on the device, passwords, emails, banking credentials, everything. This particular software also captures screenshots and browsing history. All data is transmitted in real time to an external email address. What email address? dh.secure2023@protonmail.com. ProtonMail is an encrypted email service often used for privacy. The account was created on September 9, 2023, one day before the software was installed, from the same IP address registered to David Hayes' apartment in Pearl District. The courtroom was silent except for the hum of the projector. Miller continued. The keylogger was active for 6 months. It captured Mrs. Hayes' banking passwords, her two-factor authentication codes, her email correspondence, even her search history. Mr. Hayes had complete visibility into her digital life. How was it installed? Nathaniel asked. The installation required physical access to the device. Based on the timestamp September 10th at 7:43 p.m. and the installation method, someone with administrator privileges manually installed it. I closed my eyes, remembering. September 10th. David had borrowed my laptop, said his was updating. He'd sat at the kitchen table for 20 minutes, then handed it back. All optimized, babe. Should run faster now. Ms. Miller. Nathaniel said, does this constitute a crime under Oregon law? Absolutely. Oregon Revised Statutes 164. 377 criminalizes unauthorized access to computer systems and the installation of tracking software without consent. Even between spouses, this is illegal, Mrs. Hayes never authorized this surveillance. What about federal law? Under 18 U.S.C., Section 1030, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, knowingly accessing a protected computer without authorization, especially to commit fraud, carries penalties of up to 10 years imprisonment. Given that, Mr. Hayes used this access to attempt a $125,000 theft from a federally insured bank. Federal charges are very likely. Morrison stood again, his voice strained. Your Honor, my client may have made poor decisions, but Judge Franklin held up a hand. Mr. Morrison, poor decisions is installing a tracking app to monitor a teenage child. This is systematic digital surveillance of an adult woman coupled with attempted grand theft. These are not equivalent. He turned to Miller. Ms. Miller, you mentioned Mr. Hayes used his own IP address and email. Is that common in these cases? Miller almost smiled. No, Your Honor. Professional criminals use VPNs, burner emails, public Wi-Fi. Mr. Hayes did none of that. He executed the transaction from his own home network using credentials captured by software linked directly to his email. From a technical standpoint, he left a trail a first-year computer science student could follow. So, he's not a sophisticated criminal. He's an amateur who thought he was smarter than he was, Miller said flatly. And he got caught. Nathaniel thanked her and turned back to the judge. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. David Hayes installed spyware on his wife's computer 6 months ago. He used it to steal her banking credentials. He added his phone to her two-factor authentication under false pretenses. Then at 2:31 in the morning, he attempted to transfer $125,000 to an account he controlled. When that failed, he filed this conservatorship petition as Plan B, a legal mechanism to seize what he couldn't steal outright. Judge Franklin's expression had shifted from neutral to something far colder. Mr. Hayes isn't trying to protect his wife. He's trying to rob her. Yes, Your Honor. The judge leaned forward, his gaze fixed on David, who sat rigid and pale. "Mr. Hayes, you didn't just attempt theft, you committed sustained cyberstalking. You violated your wife's privacy for 6 months. You manipulated her grief to gain access to her accounts. And when all of that failed, you came into my courtroom with forged documents." He turned to Nathaniel. "You said you have proof Mr. Hayes purchased the fake psychological report." "Yes, Your Honor, and I have a witness who can explain exactly how that transaction occurred." Morrison whispered urgently to David, but David looked like a man watching his life collapse in real time. Judge Franklin's voice was steel. "Then I want to hear from that witness. Now." Nathaniel nodded. "Your Honor, our investigation into this case was authorized under seal 3 weeks ago, allowing us to conduct surveillance of Mr. Hayes' activities. What we discovered proves he didn't just lie to his wife, he lied to this court." He gestured to the bailiff. "I'd like to call our next witness." The courtroom doors opened, and this time the woman who walked through would change everything. Before I reveal who this mystery witness really is, the person David thought was helping him commit fraud, type the number 1 in the comments if you're still with me. Let me know you're here for the truth. Quick reminder, the next part of this story contains some fictionalized details for educational purposes. If that's not for you, feel free to pause here. Nathaniel opened a file marked Confidential, court authorized in red letters. Inside were photographs, screenshots of messages, email chains, and surveillance footage. He spread them across the table like a prosecutor building a murder case. "Your Honor," he began. 3 weeks ago, immediately after this court issued a protective order freezing Mrs. Hayes' accounts, I noticed irregularities in Mr. Hayes' behavior. He was frantically searching for ways to bolster his conservatorship claim. So I filed a motion for protective investigation requesting authorization to conduct limited surveillance to uncover potential fraud upon the court. Judge Franklin nodded. "I approved that motion in a sealed hearing on February 28th. Mr. Parker was granted permission to investigate whether Mr. Hayes was manufacturing evidence." "Exactly." Nathaniel pulled out the first document. "What we discovered exceeded our worst expectations. Our investigator found that David Hayes had been active on a darknet forum called the Document Network, a marketplace specializing in fraudulent documents, fake diplomas, medical records, court orders, psychological evaluations." He projected a screenshot onto the courtroom screen. The forum's header was stark: "The Document Network Verification Without Verification." Beneath it, a post from user DH_2024 needs psych eval. Patient won't cooperate with assessment. Willing to pay $5,000 cash. Must state cognitive impairment. Poor financial judgment, needs conservatorship. Timeline 1 week. Serious inquiries only. The timestamp, February 22nd, 2024. The courtroom went silent. "Your Honor." Nathaniel said, "We verified through digital forensics that the account DH_2024 belongs to David Hayes. The posts were made from his IP address using his personal laptop." Morrison stood, his face red. "Your Honor, this is entrapment. The defense created a fake identity to—" "Let me stop you there, Mr. Morrison." Nathaniel's voice was calm, clinical. "Entrapment requires law enforcement to induce someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. That's not what happened here. Our investigator created a passive account under the name LC_broker, shorthand for Lisa Walker Broker. We posted no solicitations. We made no offers. We simply waited to see if Mr. Hayes would reach out." He pulled up another screenshot, a direct message chain. "David Hayes contacted us first. He initiated the conversation. He proposed the price. He specified the fraudulent content he wanted. Watch." The messages appeared on screen. DH_2024. "Saw your profile. Can you help with medical documentation? LC_broker depends. What do you need? DH_2024. Psychological evaluation. Subject my wife. She won't sit for assessment, but I need official report saying she's impaired. Memory issues, poor judgment. Can you deliver LC_broker? That's a big ask. Risky. DH_2024. I'll pay $5,000. Cash. No trail. LC_broker. Timeline DH_2024. 1 week. I have court date March 18th. Need it submitted by March 12th. Nathaniel let the silence stretch. Your Honor, our investigator never suggested fraud, never encouraged illegal activity. David Hayes sought out a criminal marketplace, found what he thought was a willing accomplice, and orchestrated the entire transaction himself. Judge Franklin leaned forward. You're saying, Mr. Hayes wrote the specifications for his own fake report. Not just specifications. Nathaniel pulled out another document, a handwritten note photographed from the Starbucks meeting. On March 5th, David Hayes met our investigator in person at a Starbucks on Southeast Burnside. He brought $5,000 in cash and this. The handwritten note appeared on screen. Shaky but legible. Must include severe memory problems. Poor financial judgment. Recommendation full conservatorship required. Date evaluation. March 10th, 2024. Sign is Dr. Lisa Walker. PsyD. He dictated the conclusions before the evaluation even happened, Nathaniel said. This isn't a medical report. It's a script David Hayes wrote and paid someone to produce. Morrison objected again. Your Honor, my client was deceived by your investigator. Your client sought out document fraud services, Nathaniel countered. He wasn't approached. He wasn't coerced. He Googled his way to a criminal forum, posted an ad for fake documents, negotiated a price, and handed over cash. The only reason he didn't succeed is because the person he hired happened to be working for us. Judge Franklin turned to Morrison. Counselor, if your client had successfully hired a real forger instead of an undercover investigator, would that make his actions less criminal? Morrison opened his mouth, then closed it. Nathaniel played the final piece of evidence surveillance footage from the Starbucks meeting. The video was grainy but clear. David at a corner table, sliding a thick envelope across to a woman with dark hair. She opens it, counts the bills. David hands her the handwritten note. She nods. They shake hands. Your Honor. Nathaniel said, this video was taken in a public space, no expectation of privacy. Our investigator wore a body camera with audio recording, which is legal in Oregon, as long as one party consents, and she consented to her own recording. He played the audio. David's voice came through tense but determined. David, you understand what I need, right? The report has to say she's not capable of handling money, that she's a danger to herself financially. Investigator LC_broker. You're aware this is illegal. Submitting false medical records to a court. David, I know the risks, but I don't have a choice. She'll waste everything. The court won't verify every license. They'll take the report at face value. Investigator, and if they find out, David, they won't. The audio stopped. Judge Franklin removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. Mr. Hayes didn't just commit fraud. He did it knowingly, willfully, and with full understanding of the consequences. Nathaniel nodded. He also chose the name Dr. Lisa Walker himself. Our investigator simply adopted that identity when he came looking for someone to fulfill his order. It wasn't entrapment. It was him walking into a trap he built. The judge looked at David, who sat frozen, his lawyer whispering urgently beside him. Mr. Parker, Judge Franklin said, I want to hear from your investigator, the person David Hayes believed was helping him commit fraud. I want her testimony under oath. Of course, Your Honor. Nathaniel turned toward the gallery doors. She's waiting outside. He nodded to the bailiff, who opened the doors. A woman in her early 40s entered, professional, composed, carrying a leather portfolio. She wore a blazer and slacks, her expression neutral but confident. This wasn't a criminal. This was someone who'd spent a career catching them. Your Honor. Nathaniel said, I'd like to call to the stand Private Investigator Rebecca Martinez, licensed by the Oregon Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. 18 years of experience in undercover operations. David's face drained of color as the woman walked past him, the same woman who'd taken his $5,000, the same woman who'd promised him a fake report, the woman who'd been working for me all along. The door opened. A woman in her early 40s stepped into the courtroom. Short dark hair, black blazer, no-nonsense demeanor. She didn't look like a doctor. She looked like what she was, a professional investigator who'd spent 2 decades catching people in lies. The bailiff gestured to the witness stand. "Please state your full name and occupation for the record." She placed her hand on the Bible, her voice clear and steady. "Rebecca Martinez. I'm a licensed private investigator in the state of Oregon, DPSST number P, I-18-4923. I've been conducting investigations for 19 years, specializing in undercover operations fraud cases and court-authorized surveillance. Ms. Martinez Nathaniel began, "Did you ever represent yourself as Dr. Lisa Walker, a licensed psychologist?" "No, sir. I never used the title Doctor or PSYD when communicating with David Hayes. I used the name Lisa Walker as an alias, a cover identity for an undercover investigation. That's standard protocol in my field. How did you come to be involved in this case? On February 25th, you hired me to conduct surveillance of David Hayes under a sealed court order. You suspected he was manufacturing evidence to support his conservatorship petition. My job was to monitor his activities and document any attempts at fraud." "What did you discover?" Rebecca pulled out a tablet referencing her notes. "Within 48 hours, I identified that Mr. Hayes was active on a darknet forum called the Document Network. This is a marketplace where individuals can purchase fraudulent documents, diplomas, medical records, legal filings. On February 22nd, Mr. Hayes posted a request for a fake psychological evaluation. She looked directly at David. He wasn't looking for a real doctor. He was looking for someone who would create a report without ever meeting his wife. What did you do?" "I created an account under the username LC_broker, short for Lisa Walker Broker. I posted a general notice indicating I could facilitate specialized documentation services. I made no solicitations. I didn't reach out to anyone. I simply waited to see who would contact me." "And did Mr. Hayes contact you?" "Yes. On February 23rd, he sent me a direct message asking if I could help with medical documentation that didn't require patient cooperation." Those were his exact words. Nathaniel projected the message thread onto the screen. "Your Honor, these are the authenticated messages between Ms. Martinez and Mr. Hayes." Rebecca continued, "Mr. Hayes initiated every aspect of the transaction. He proposed the $5,000 fee. He specified the fraudulent content, severe memory impairment, poor financial judgment, recommendation for full conservatorship. He even chose the name Doctor Lisa Walker and told me to sign the report as a PSYD. At any point, did you encourage him to commit fraud?" "Absolutely not. My responses were deliberately neutral. When he asked if I could provide documentation, I asked about timeline and payment method. I never suggested illegal activity. He came to me already knowing what he wanted and how to get it." Morrison stood abruptly. "Objection, Your Honor. Ms. Martinez is an agent of the respondent. She created a fake identity specifically to deceive my client." "Your client sought out a criminal marketplace," Nathaniel cut in. "Ms. Martinez didn't lure him there. She didn't advertise fraud. She simply existed in a space where Mr. Hayes went looking for someone to help him break the law." Judge Franklin turned to Rebecca. "Ms. Martinez, in your professional opinion, was this entrapment?" "No, Your Honor. Entrapment requires inducement, convincing someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. Mr. Hayes came to that forum with intent. He'd already decided to obtain a fake report. If he hadn't found me, he would have found someone else, and that person would have provided him with a usable forgery. Instead, he found an investigator who documented his crimes." "Walk me through the Starbucks meeting," Nathaniel said. "March 5th, 10 a.m., Southeast Burnside Starbucks. Mr. Hayes arrived with a manila envelope containing $5,000 in cash. I counted it. He also brought a handwritten note detailing the exact language he wanted in the report." She pulled up a photograph of the note. He wrote, must include severe memory problems, poor financial judgment, recommendation for full conservatorship. Yao, he told me the report needed to be dated March 10th and submitted to the court by March 12th. Did you ask him if he understood the illegality of his actions? Yes, I said, and I quote, "You're aware this is illegal, submitting false medical records to a court." He responded, "I know, but I don't have a choice. Rachel will waste everything. The court won't verify every license. They'll take the report at face value." The courtroom was silent. "He knew," Rebecca said quietly. "He knew exactly what he was doing and exactly why it was wrong. He just didn't think he'd get caught." Nathaniel pulled up another document. "Miss Martinez, did you comply with Oregon's recording laws during this meeting?" "Yes. Oregon is a one-party consent state for audio recording, which means as long as one participant in a conversation consents to recording, it's legal. I consented to my own recording. Additionally, I placed a small notice on the table stating, 'This conversation may be recorded.' It was visible throughout our meeting." She gestured to the surveillance footage. The Starbucks also had security cameras which captured the entire exchange in a public space where there's no expectation of privacy. Morrison stood again. "Your Honor, Ms. Martinez deceived my client by pretending to be a criminal document broker." Rebecca turned to him, her expression cool. "I didn't pretend to be anything. I created a passive account and waited to see who would come looking for illegal services. Your client found me because he was actively seeking fraud. I didn't dangle bait, he was already hunting." Judge Franklin leaned forward. "Ms. Martinez, did you ever provide Mr. Hayes with the fake report he paid for?" "No, Your Honor. I took his money and his instructions, then immediately turned everything over to Mr. Parker. The report that was filed with this court, I didn't write it. Either, Mr. Hayes wrote it himself or he found another forger after our meeting. But based on the timeline and content, I believe he drafted it personally using the specifications he gave me." Nathaniel addressed the judge. "Your Honor, Ms. Martinez's investigation proves that David Hayes actively sought out fraud, paid for it, and then submitted forged documents to this court. He wasn't tricked. He wasn't coerced. He made a calculated decision to lie under oath." Morrison tried one more time. "Your Honor, my client believed he was hiring a legitimate service." "Legitimate services don't operate on darknet forums," Judge Franklin said flatly. "They don't accept cash in coffee shops. They don't create medical reports for patients they've never met." He looked at David, whose face had gone ashen. Mr. Hayes knew exactly what he was doing. The judge turned to Rebecca. "Ms. Martinez, if you hadn't intercepted this transaction, what would have happened? Mr. Hayes would have successfully submitted a fraudulent psychological evaluation to this court. Mrs. Hayes would have lost control of her inheritance, and a criminal would have walked away unpunished." She paused. "Instead, we caught him." Judge Franklin set down his pen. "Thank you, Ms. Martinez. You may step down." As Rebecca walked back to her seat, she passed David's table. He wouldn't meet her eyes. The judge turned to Morrison. "Counselor, your client has been caught attempting grand theft, computer fraud, and perjury. He hired someone to create fake medical evidence and submitted it under oath to my court. Do you have anything to say in his defense?" Morrison stood slowly, his hands shaking. Morrison stood, his face drained of color. I watched as he turned to look at David, not with the solidarity of an attorney defending his client, but with the fury of a man who just realized he'd been used. "Your Honor." Morrison began, his voice tight. "I had no knowledge that this report was fraudulent. My client provided it to me, assured me it was legitimate documentation from a licensed professional. I trusted him." Judge Franklin's expression didn't soften. "You trusted him without verification." Morrison faltered. "I should have checked, but I believed my client was acting in good faith." Good faith?" Morrison turned sharply toward David, his composure cracking. "You told me Dr. Lisa Walker was real. You swore she was a licensed psychologist who'd evaluated your wife. Didn't you?" David's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "I'm saving my career." Morrison's voice rose. "I'm not letting you drag me down with you." He turned back to the judge, his hands gripping the table. Your Honor, I admit I failed to exercise due diligence. That was negligent, but I did not participate in creating this forgery. I did not know David Hayes paid $5,000 cash for a fake report. I did not know he was operating on darknet forums or soliciting fraud. Every illegal action here was committed by him. Nathaniel rose his voice, calm but cutting. Your Honor, while Mr. Morrison may not have actively participated in the fraud, he violated multiple ethical obligations as an officer of this court. He walked to the center of the room. Mr. Morrison, you submitted a 12-page psychological evaluation to this court. Let me ask you some questions. Morrison stiffened. Did you notice the report had no professional stamp? I assumed. Did you notice there was no license number? My client said, did it concern you that there was no office address, no phone number, no way to contact this supposed expert? Morrison opened his mouth, then closed it. Did you at any point attempt to verify Dr. Lisa Walker's credentials? Call the Oregon Health Authority, search the state licensing database. Make a single phone call. Silence. How long would that have taken, Mr. Morrison? 5 minutes 10. I trusted my client, Morrison repeated weakly. You trusted a client who was filing an emergency conservatorship petition, one of the most serious civil actions you can bring. You trusted him to provide expert testimony without doing the bare minimum to verify its authenticity. Nathaniel pulled out another document. And it wasn't just the psychological report, was it? He projected a financial statement onto the screen. You also submitted Exhibit D, a financial disclosure signed by Robert CPA, claiming David Hayes has a net worth of $350,000. Morrison's face went pale. I checked with the Oregon Board of Accountancy. There is no Robert with an active CPA license in this state, and a forensic review of Mr. Hayes' actual finances, credit cards, bank statements, loan documents shows he's not worth $350,000. He owes $480,000. His net worth is negative. Nathaniel turned to Judge Franklin. Mr. Morrison submitted 2 fraudulent expert reports to this court. Either he was criminally complicit or he was so negligent that he failed to perform the most basic verification any first-year associate would know to do. Judge Franklin removed his glasses, his gaze locked on Morrison. Mr. Morrison, you've been practicing law for over 20 years. You've handled conservatorship cases before. Are you telling me you didn't think to verify the credentials of an expert witness whose testimony was the entire basis for your petition? Morrison's voice cracked. I should have. I know I should have. Should have? The judge's tone hardened. You had a duty under Oregon Rules of Professional Conduct, specifically Rule 3.3, you have a duty of candor to the tribunal. You cannot submit evidence you know or should know is false. I didn't know. You should have known. A 5-minute search would have revealed Dr. Lisa Walker doesn't exist. A phone call would have exposed Robert as a fabrication. But you didn't make those calls because you didn't want to know. Judge Franklin leaned forward. That's not incompetence, Mr. Morrison. That's willful blindness. Morrison sank into his chair, his shoulders slumped. I'm referring this matter to the Oregon State Bar for disciplinary proceedings. The judge continued. You'll face sanctions for violating rules 1.1, 3.3, and 8.4. Possible outcomes include suspension, probation, mandatory ethics training, and fines. If the bar determines you acted with knowledge of the fraud, you could be disbarred. Morrison stared at the table, saying nothing. Judge Franklin's attention shifted. But you're not the one who orchestrated this scheme. He looked directly at David, who sat rigid, his hands clenched on the table. Mr. Hayes. The judge said, his voice cold and precise. Step up to the witness stand. Now. David didn't move. Mr. Hayes, I'm not asking. I'm ordering. Take the stand, or I'll hold you in contempt of court and have you taken into custody immediately. David looked at Morrison, who wouldn't meet his eyes. He looked at me, desperation flooding his face, but I turned away. Slowly, his legs shaking, David stood. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of his footsteps as he walked to the witness stand. The bailiff handed him a Bible. David's hand trembled as he raised it. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" David's voice was barely a whisper. "I do." He sat down, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw him not as my husband, not as the man I'd loved, but as what he really was, a desperate man who'd gambled everything on a lie. And lost. I watched David, the man I'd spent 7 years loving, walk to the witness stand. His face was a mask of desperation, his hands trembling as he placed one on the Bible. When he sat down, he stared at the wall behind the judge, refusing to meet my eyes. Morrison stood for what would be the briefest direct examination I'd ever seen. "Mr. Hayes, why did you file for conservatorship?" David's voice was quiet, almost rehearsed. "I was worried about Rachel. After her father died, she wasn't herself. She stopped seeing friends. She wouldn't answer her phone. She just shut down. When she inherited $580,000, I thought she needed help managing it. I thought I was protecting her. Did you have any malicious intent?" "No." David's voice cracked. "I just wanted to protect my wife." Morrison sat down quickly as if he couldn't bear to stand beside his client any longer. Nathaniel rose slowly, gathering a stack of documents. He didn't rush. He let the silence build until David started shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "Mr. Hayes." Nathaniel began his tone conversational. "How much money do you currently owe?" David hesitated. "I'm not sure of the exact amount. Let me help you." Nathaniel projected a spreadsheet onto the screen lines of red numbers, creditor names, balances. "According to records subpoenaed from your bank's credit card companies and loan providers, you owe $480,000. Does that sound accurate?" David's jaw tightened. "Roughly." "Roughly." Nathaniel nodded. "Your tech startup failed 8 months ago. You maxed out 5 credit cards trying to save it. You took payday loans at 35% interest. You're drowning in debt." "Correct." "I had some financial setbacks." "You're bankrupt," Nathaniel said flatly. "Your net worth is negative. You can't pay your bills. Debt collectors are calling you daily." "True." David said nothing. "Let's talk about the house." Nathaniel pulled up an email. "On March 1st, 2 weeks before this hearing, you sent this message to Portland Premier Realty." The email appeared on screen. "I'm about to gain control of a $380,000 property in Laurelhurst. Need to sell within 30 days. Will accept below market value for fast close." Nathaniel read it aloud, then turned to David. "You weren't trying to protect the $125,000 in savings, were you? You were after the house. Your late father-in-law's house. The house Rachel grew up in. That was the real target." "I was just exploring options." "You wrote, 'I'm about to gain control,' past tense, like it was already decided, like you knew you'd win this case. Why were you so confident, Mr. Hayes?" David stared at his hands. "Let me ask you something else." Nathaniel switched gears. "Do you know a woman named Elena Rodriguez?" David's head snapped up. "Who?" "Elena Rodriguez, 29 years old, owns a hair salon in Beaverton called Elegance Hair Studio. Ring any bells?" "I don't." Nathaniel projected a check image. "This is a $25,000 check you wrote to her in December 2023. The memo line says, 'Salon Investment.' Want to revise your answer?" David's face flushed. That's private." "Not anymore." Nathaniel pulled up text messages. "These are messages between you and Ms. Rodriguez obtained through legal discovery. Let me read a few." He pointed to the screen. "David, don't worry, babe. After the hearing, I'll have the money. I'll sell the house $380,000. We'll be set. Elena, you promise I can't keep waiting?" "David, I promise. 2 weeks. Then we start fresh." The courtroom was silent. "You've been having an affair for 10 months, Nathaniel said. "You told Ms. Rodriguez you were separated from Rachel. You promised her money from your wife's inheritance. And you planned to liquidate Rachel's father's house to fund your new life. Is that accurate?" David's voice was barely a whisper. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Nathaniel's voice rose. "Explain to this court how stealing your grieving wife's inheritance and selling her childhood home to fund an affair is protecting her." David opened his mouth, but no words came. Nathaniel pressed on. "Let's talk about Dr. Lisa Walker. Do you know anyone by that name?" David's hands gripped the armrests. "I know." "No." Nathaniel projected the Starbucks surveillance photo, David handing over the envelope of cash. "This is you, isn't it?" David went pale. "March 5th, 10 a.m., Southeast Burnside Starbucks. You met a woman you believed to be a document broker. You gave her $5,000 in cash. What was that for?" "I don't remember." "You don't remember giving someone $5,000 2 weeks ago?" Nathaniel's tone was incredulous. "Let me refresh your memory. You paid that money for a fake psychological evaluation. You hired someone to create a report claiming your wife was mentally incompetent, a report signed by a psychologist who doesn't exist. Didn't you? I didn't. You posted on a darknet forum looking for fake medical documents. You negotiated the price. You specified the fraudulent content. You even wrote out the conclusions you wanted: severe memory problems, poor financial judgment, needs full conservatorship. You handed that note to the broker along with the cash." Nathaniel held up the handwritten note David's handwriting photographed and authenticated. "This is your handwriting, isn't it?" David stared at it, his face ashen. "Mister Hayes, you didn't just lie to your wife. You didn't just cheat on her. You committed a crime. You fabricated evidence and submitted it to this court under oath. And when your theft attempt failed at 2:31 a.m., you doubled down with this fraudulent conservatorship petition. I needed," David's voice broke, "I needed the money." "You needed it." Nathaniel's voice was sharp. "So you installed spyware on your wife's computer. You monitored her for 6 months. You stole her banking credentials. You tried to drain her account while she slept. And when all of that failed, you came to this court with forged documents and lied under oath." David buried his face in his hands. Just then, the courtroom doors opened. A young woman entered, late 20s, long dark hair, leather jacket, pulling a large travel suitcase behind her. A court officer walked beside her, guiding her forward. David looked up and froze. "Elena." His voice was a strangled whisper. She didn't look at him. Her eyes were red, her expression hard. Judge Franklin turned to Nathaniel. "Mr. Parker, who is this witness?" Nathaniel smiled grimly. "Your Honor, this is Elena Rodriguez. She contacted my office last night after seeing the court docket online. She has information about Mr. Hayes' plans, including his intent to flee the jurisdiction immediately after this hearing." David's face went white. Elena finally looked at him, and her voice was cold. "I'm not going to Mexico with you, David. I'm not going anywhere with you." The courtroom fell into stunned silence as Elena Rodriguez walked down the aisle, the wheels of her suitcase rolling across the polished floor. Every eye followed her. This woman who'd been a ghost in the evidence until now, suddenly flesh and blood. Nathaniel addressed the judge. "Your Honor, this is a rebuttal witness. Ms. Rodriguez contacted my office last night at 9:47 p.m. after discovering this case on the county court's public docket. She has critical information about Mr. Hayes' intent to flee the jurisdiction immediately following this hearing." Morrison shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a blatant discovery violation. We had no notice." "She contacted us after the hearing began," Nathaniel countered smoothly, "based on publicly available court records. Under Oregon Evidence Code, rebuttal witnesses may testify to newly discovered evidence that directly contradicts the petitioner's claims. This qualifies." Judge Franklin considered. "Mr. Morrison, you'll have the opportunity to cross-examine. Objection overruled. Proceed." A court security officer stopped Elena at the gate, gesturing to her suitcase. "Ma'am, we need to inspect that." She nodded, stepping aside as he unzipped it. Clothes, toiletries, a passport, nothing dangerous. She came directly from Portland International Airport. the officer reported. Cleared security there an hour ago. Judge Franklin's eyebrows rose. Ms. Rodriguez, leave the luggage with the bailiff. Take the stand. Elena walked forward, her leather jacket creaking, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. When she passed David's table, he reached out as if to touch her arm. She jerked away without looking at him. Elena, please don't do this. Judge Franklin's gavel cracked down. Mr. Hayes, you will remain silent or I will have you removed from this courtroom. Final warning. David sank back, his face pale. The bailiff held out a Bible. Elena placed her hand on it, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She sat finally looking at David, not with love, but with something closer to disgust. Nathaniel approached gently. Ms. Rodriguez, how do you know David Hayes? We've been in a relationship for 10 months. Her voice was quiet but clear. We met at a small business expo in Beaverton last May. Did Mr. Hayes tell you he was married? He said he was separated, going through a difficult divorce. He told me his wife Rachel was struggling with mental health issues after her father's death. He said she couldn't take care of herself, that he had to step in legally to protect her. Nathaniel pulled up the $25,000 check on the screen. Did Mr. Hayes give you money? Yes. In December, he invested $25,000 in my salon. He said it was the start of our future together, that once he got control of Rachel's inheritance, we'd have enough to expand my business and start fresh. Did he promise you additional money? Elena nodded, wiping her eyes. He said after the conservatorship was approved, he'd sell Rachel's house, the one her father left her, for $380,000. He promised me $80,000 from that to open a second salon location. And you believed him. I trusted him. Her voice broke. He seemed like he was trying to do the right thing, helping a wife who couldn't help herself. I didn't realize she was perfectly fine, that he was lying about everything. Nathaniel gestured to the suitcase by the bailiff's desk. Ms. Rodriguez, why did you bring luggage to court today? Elena took a shaky breath. 2 days ago, David told me to pack. He said immediately after today's hearing, we were flying to Cancun. One-way tickets. He'd already booked them, leaving at 4:30 p.m. today. He said we'd stay in Mexico for a few months while everything settled, then move somewhere else. Maybe Costa Rica. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. He told you to flee the country. He didn't call it that. He called it starting our new life. But yes, he wanted to leave the U.S. as soon as the judge ruled in his favor. Nathaniel turned to Judge Franklin. Your Honor, that's evidence of consciousness of guilt. Mr. Hayes planned to obtain conservatorship through fraud, liquidate his wife's assets, and immediately flee to avoid consequences. Morrison stood weakly. Your Honor, my client may have discussed travel. With one-way tickets to a non-extradition-friendly country, Nathaniel shot back. That's not a vacation. That's flight risk. Judge Franklin's expression was stone. Ms. Rodriguez, why are you here instead of on your way to Mexico? Elena looked directly at David. Because 3 days ago, I Googled his name. I found his marriage license. Public record. He's not separated. He's not getting divorced. He's fully legally married to Rachel Hayes, and they live together. Her voice hardened. Then I found this court case. I read the petition. I saw he was trying to take control of her money by claiming she was incompetent. And I realized everything he told me was a lie. She turned to the judge. I don't know what I thought would happen when I came here. Maybe I'd just watch from the back. But when I heard him on the stand, still lying, still pretending he cared about Rachel, her voice cracked. I couldn't let him get away with it. So you contacted Mr. Parker. Last night, I told him about the Mexico plan. I offered to testify. She pulled a printed email from her jacket pocket. Here's the flight confirmation. David Hayes and Elena Rodriguez. PDX to Cancun. Departure 4:30 p.m. today. One way. $1,847 per ticket charged to his credit card 3 days ago. Nathaniel took the printout, entered it as evidence. Morrison tried once more. Your Honor, Ms. Rodriguez is a scorned lover. She's testifying out of spite. I'm testifying because I was lied to, Elena said sharply. and because I'm not going to help a man steal from his grieving wife." Judge Franklin studied her for a long moment. "Ms. Rodriguez, do you have any financial interest in the outcome of this case?" "No, Your Honor. I just want to tell the truth." She looked at David one last time, something he never did. Nathaniel smiled slightly. "Ms. Rodriguez, can you tell us more about David's plans after selling the house? What did he say he'd do with the money?" Elena nodded, steadying herself, and the final pieces of David's lies began to crumble. Elena wiped away her tears and straightened in her seat. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier, the voice of someone who'd made a decision and wouldn't back down. "We met 10 months ago at a small business expo in Portland," she began. "One of those networking events for local entrepreneurs. David seemed charming, successful. He drove a Tesla, wore expensive suits, talked about his tech startup like it was the next big thing. I own a small salon in Beaverton. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. He said he admired that. Said he wanted to invest in real businesses run by real people." Nathaniel pulled up a photograph David and Elena at a restaurant, smiling, his arm around her. "When did the relationship become romantic?" "Within a month. He told me he was separated, that his wife was going through a mental health crisis, and they were living apart. He said the divorce would be final soon, that he just needed to tie up some financial loose ends." Elena's voice hardened. "I believed him. Did he give you money?" "In December, he wrote me a check for $25,000. He called it an investment in my salon, said it was a down payment on our future together." She looked at David, her eyes cold. "He said once he finalized things with Rachel, once he got conservatorship and sold her father's house, he'd have $380,000. He promised me $80,000 of that to open a second location." Nathaniel projected text messages onto the screen. "Are these messages from Mr. Hayes?" Elena nodded. "Yes, that's his number. Let's walk through them chronologically." Nathaniel pointed to the first message dated March 5th. "David, don't worry, babe. I'll have the first $125,000 soon. Then there's more coming." "What did you understand that to mean?" Nathaniel asked. "He said he was moving money out of Rachel's accounts before the court could freeze them. He made it sound like he was protecting assets from an incompetent person. I didn't realize he was stealing from his own wife." Nathaniel moved to the next message. "March 10th, David. I've taken care of the doctor. The report is very convincing." Elena's voice was quiet. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but now, she looked at the fake psychological evaluation on the screen. "Now I know he was talking about this, the fake report." Nathaniel pulled up the most damning message. March 15th, 2:38 a.m. "David, just move the money. If this works, we're flying out tomorrow." "What time did he send this?" 2:38 in the morning. "I was asleep. When I woke up and saw it, I thought he was talking about a business deal." Elena's voice broke. "I didn't know he just tried to steal $125,000 from Rachel while she was sleeping." The courtroom was silent. Nathaniel displayed the final message March 16th. "David, small hiccup, but the court hearing will fix it. After that, we're gone." "What did he tell you about leaving Portland?" Elena took a breath. 2 weeks ago, David started getting anxious. He was constantly on his phone getting calls from numbers he wouldn't answer in front of me. When I asked, he said it was business stress. Then a week ago, he told me, everything will be fine after the hearing. After March 18th, we start over. And 2 days ago, he told me to pack. He said we were leaving Portland permanently, flying to Cancun, then moving to another country, maybe Costa Rica or Panama, somewhere where we could live well on less money. He'd already booked one-way tickets for 4:30 p.m. today. Nathaniel turned to face her fully. "Did David ever mention forging documents?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. "Once, about a week ago, I went to his apartment. He was at his laptop typing something. When I came in, he minimized the window, but I saw enough it looked like a medical report, official letterhead, clinical language." "What did you say?" "I asked what he was working on. He laughed and said," Elena's voice dropped, imitating David's tone, "This is the perfect trap. They'll never figure it out." Did he explain what he meant? Not exactly, but he said something about how courts don't have time to verify every credential, that judges trust documents that look official. He said, as long as it looks real, it is real. Elena looked at Judge Franklin. I thought he was joking or exaggerating. I didn't think he'd actually submit fake evidence to a court. Nathaniel let that sink in. Ms. Rodriguez, when did you realize David had lied about everything? 3 days ago. I Googled his name, just curious, maybe a little paranoid. I found his marriage license, current, not separated, not divorced. Then I found the property records. He and Rachel own a house together. They live together. There was no separation. No mental health crisis, just lies. Her voice wavered. Then I found this court case online. I read the petition. I saw he was trying to take control of Rachel's money by claiming she was incompetent. And I realized he wasn't protecting her. He was robbing her. Why didn't you confront him? I was scared and ashamed. I'd been complicit without knowing it. So I called Mr. Parker last night and told him about the Mexico plan. I thought maybe I could at least stop him from getting away with it. Nathaniel nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. But before the judge could speak, David exploded. She's lying. He shot to his feet, his face red, his voice cracking. She's just a gold digger who wanted my money. She knew exactly what she was getting into. Judge Franklin's gavel slammed down like a gunshot. Mr. Hayes, sit down immediately. This is your final warning. She's making this up because I broke up with her. She's vengeful. Bailiff! Judge Franklin's voice thundered through the courtroom. Restrain Mr. Hayes. One more outburst and he will be removed. The bailiff stepped forward, placing a firm hand on David's shoulder. David's chest heaved, his eyes wild, but he sank back into his chair, his face burning with humiliation. Judge Franklin turned to Elena, his expression softer. Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for your testimony. You may step down. As Elena walked past David's table, he wouldn't look at her. She didn't look at him either. David couldn't hold it together anymore. He shot to his feet, pointing at Elena, his face twisted with rage and desperation. She's a gold digger, he shouted, his voice cracking. She only came near me because she thought I had money. She knew what she was getting into. Morrison grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back down. David, sit down. Don't say another word. But David wrenched free, his control completely shattered. I needed that money. I owe $480,000. They're going to take everything. My startup failed. I had no choice. Nathaniel's voice cut through the chaos, calm and cold. You had a choice. You could have filed for bankruptcy, but instead you chose to steal from your wife. You don't understand. David's voice rose to a desperate shout. None of you understand. Judge Franklin's gavel slammed down. Mr. Hayes. But David wasn't listening. The dam had broken. Everything he'd been holding back came pouring out in a flood of rage and self-pity. I was a senior software engineer at Intel. I made $180,000 a year. People respected me. I was good at what I did. His voice broke. But I wanted more. I wanted to be like Zuckerberg, like Musk, someone who built something that mattered. So I quit. I poured $300,000, everything I had, into my startup. I worked 90-hour weeks. I sacrificed everything. He laughed bitterly. And it all fell apart. Every investor pulled out. The product didn't work. The company collapsed. I lost everything. Not just money, my reputation, my confidence, my future. His eyes found me pleading. And then your father died, and suddenly you had $580,000. Money you didn't earn. Money you didn't work for. You just inherited it because you were his daughter. His voice turned bitter. While I was drowning in debt, you had more money than you knew what to do with. You didn't even care about it. You were so lost in grief, you weren't paying attention to anything. And I thought, he choked on the words, I thought maybe I could use it to start over, to have a second chance. So you decided to steal it, Nathaniel said quietly. I deserved a second chance. David's voice cracked. I worked hard my whole life. I took risks and I lost. But that doesn't mean I should lose everything forever. Morrison grabbed his arm again. David, stop talking. David shook him off. The house is worth $380,000. That's all I needed. Sell the house, pay off my debts, start fresh with Elena somewhere new. I wasn't going to hurt Rachel. She'd still have the savings, still have her business. She'd be fine. You tried to steal $125,000 at 2 a.m, Nathaniel reminded him. You installed spyware on her computer. You forged medical documents. You lied to a court. That's not trying to help. That's theft, fraud, and betrayal. David's face crumpled. I didn't have a choice. That's when I stood up. My hands were shaking, my vision blurred with tears, but my voice came out steady, strong. David, you keep saying you deserved a second chance, that you didn't have a choice. He looked at me, desperate hope flickering in his eyes. My father worked for 40 years as a high school teacher. He made $60,000 a year, a third of what you made. He saved every penny. He lived modestly so that one day he could leave something behind for me. That house, he built it with his own hands, literally. He and his friends spent 2 summers framing it, roofing it, finishing it. My voice hardened. He left it to me because he trusted me. Not because I didn't earn it, but because he believed I would honor what it represented, his life's work, his love, his legacy. I took a step closer. You had the right to risk your own money on your startup. You had the right to fail, but you did not have the right to gamble with my inheritance. You didn't have the right to steal what my father spent a lifetime building. David opened his mouth, but I wasn't finished. You say you didn't have a choice. That's a lie. You made choices every single day. You chose to install spyware on my laptop. You chose to monitor me for 6 months. You chose to steal my banking credentials. You chose to try to take $125,000 while I was asleep. You chose to forge a psychological evaluation. You chose to file a fraudulent conservatorship petition. My voice broke, but I pushed through. You chose to betray me. You chose to destroy our marriage. You chose to lie to Elena. You chose to plan an escape to Mexico. Those were all choices, David. Your choices. I wiped my eyes. You don't get to blame fate. You don't get to blame circumstance. You did this, and now you have to face the consequences. David sank into his chair, his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of his crying. Judge Franklin stood, his expression carved from stone. Enough! His voice filled the room. Mister Hayes, based on your own admissions today and the overwhelming evidence presented, I have sufficient cause to believe you have committed multiple serious crimes. While this is a civil proceeding and I don't have the authority to arrest you on criminal charges directly, I do have the authority to take the following actions. He looked at me, his expression softening just slightly. Mrs. Hayes, I'm sorry you've had to endure this, but justice will be served. He turned back to David. Mr. Hayes, you will remain seated and silent while I render my decision. I held my breath. The final judgment was coming. Judge Franklin sat down, opened a leather-bound ledger, and began reading his decision in a voice that cut through the courtroom like steel. In the matter of Rachel Ann Hayes, case number 24-CV-12458, this court issues the following rulings. He looked up briefly, his gaze sweeping over all of us, then back to his notes. Regarding the petition for conservatorship of the estate, based on the advance designation of conservator executed by Michael Hayes in 2018, notarized, witnessed, and recorded with Multnomah County records, this court finds clear and convincing evidence of the decedent's intent. Mr. Michael Hayes, while of sound mind and body, designated his daughter, Rachel Ann Hayes, as the sole conservator authorized to manage her own affairs should such appointment ever become necessary. He paused. Under Oregon Revised Statutes 125.055, such advance designations take priority over all other petitions, including those from family members. The petitioner, David Hayes, has failed to provide any legitimate evidence that Mrs. Hayes is incapable of managing her financial affairs. To the contrary, the evidence shows she is fully competent employed and was victimized by the petitioner's fraudulent scheme. Judge Franklin's voice hardened. The petition for conservatorship is denied in its entirety. Mrs. Rachel Hayes is hereby formally appointed as conservator of her own estate per her father's wishes. She retains full legal and financial autonomy. I felt Nathaniel squeeze my shoulder. A weight I'd been carrying for weeks began to lift. But the judge wasn't finished. Regarding David James Hayes, this court has heard extensive evidence of criminal conduct. While this is a civil proceeding and I lack direct authority to prosecute criminal charges, I'm exercising my authority under 18 U.S.C. Section 401 to address fraud upon this court. He looked directly at David. Mr. Hayes, you submitted forged documents under oath. You lied to this tribunal. You attempted to use the machinery of justice to facilitate theft from your wife. That is not mere misconduct, it is a felony. Judge Franklin's tone was iron. I am taking the following actions. 1, all evidence and testimony from this hearing will be immediately transmitted to the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. 2, I am issuing a court-hold order directing that Mr. Hayes be detained in custody pending formal charges. Bail will be set by the criminal court. 3, all physical and digital evidence related to this case will be preserved and sealed for criminal proceedings. 4, Mr. Hayes will be investigated for the following crimes under Oregon law: attempted theft in the first degree ORS 164.055, attempting to steal $125,000 forgery in the first degree ORS 165.013, creating and submitting fraudulent documents, perjury ORS 162.065, lying under oath in this courtroom, identity theft ORS 165.800, unauthorized use of Mrs. Hayes' financial credentials, computer crime ORS 164.377, installing spyware and accessing protected systems without authorization. Additionally, federal authorities may pursue charges under 18 U.S.C. Section 1030, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, given that this involved a federally insured bank. He closed the ledger. The aggregate maximum sentence for these crimes is approximately 20 years in prison, plus fines and restitution. The actual sentence will be determined by the criminal court if Mr. Sethke Hayes is convicted. David sat motionless, his face ashen. Judge Franklin turned to Morrison. Regarding Stephen Morrison, Esquire, I am referring your conduct to the Oregon State Bar for disciplinary review. You submitted fraudulent expert reports without due diligence. You failed in your duty of candor to this tribunal. You may face suspension, monetary sanctions, mandatory ethics training, or disbarment depending on the bar's findings. Morrison nodded, silently defeated. The judge's tone softened slightly. Regarding Elena Rodriguez, this court finds no basis for criminal charges against you. You were deceived by Mr. Hayes and cooperated fully once you learned the truth. You are free to go, but you may be called as a witness in criminal proceedings. Elena exhaled relief, washing over her face. Finally, Judge Franklin pulled out a pre-signed order. I am issuing an emergency restraining order effective immediately. David James Hayes is prohibited from contacting Rachel Hayes by any means: phone, email, text, social media, or third parties. He is barred from coming within 500 feet of her person, residence, or workplace. Violation of this order constitutes an additional criminal offense. He looked at me. Mrs. Hayes, your father was a wise man. He trusted you to manage his legacy responsibly. I believe his trust was well placed. Use these assets wisely. Honor his memory. Thank you, Your Honor, I whispered, my voice breaking. Judge Franklin turned to the bailiff. Remove Mr. Hayes to the courthouse holding facility. Criminal intake will process him from there. 2 officers approached David's table. One pulled out handcuffs. David James Hayes, you are being detained under court order pending criminal charges. Place your hands behind your back. David didn't resist. He stood slowly, mechanically, as the officer cuffed his wrists. The metallic click echoed through the silent courtroom. For a moment, his eyes found mine. They were filled with desperation, regret, pleading all the things he should have felt weeks ago before he betrayed me. Part of me wanted to run to him, to say, "I still love you, we can fix this." Part of me felt overwhelming relief that this nightmare was finally ending, but I didn't move, because the man standing there in handcuffs wasn't the person I'd married. Maybe he never had been. The officers led him toward a side door. David looked back, once his mouth opening as if to speak, but no words came. The door closed. He was gone. Judge Franklin's gavel struck one final time. "This court is adjourned." The courtroom slowly emptied. Morrison packing his briefcase with shaking hands, Elena slipping out quietly, court staff filing paperwork. I stood alone in the middle of the room, Nathaniel beside me. "Come on," he said gently, his hand on my shoulder. "Let's get you home. You need to rest." Home. The word felt hollow. What did home even mean anymore when the person I'd trusted most had tried to destroy me? I looked at the empty witness stand, the judge's vacant bench, the table where David had sat just minutes ago. "Yeah," I said quietly, "home." But I wasn't sure where that was anymore. That evening, I sat alone in the apartment David and I had shared for 7 years. The place felt different, now smaller, quieter, emptier. Every object held a memory that now felt tainted: the couch where we'd watched movies on Friday nights, the kitchen table where he'd optimized my laptop, the bedroom where I'd slept while he tried to steal my inheritance. I stared at our wedding photo on the wall, David in a charcoal suit, me in a simple white dress, both of us laughing like we had forever. It had been taken on a beach in Cannon Beach, Oregon 7 years ago. We'd been so happy, or had we? Had any of it been real? When did it start, I wondered? When did he begin lying? Was it recent, or had he been deceiving me all along? And was any of this my fault? The guilt came first, sharp and suffocating. Maybe I'd been too trusting, too naive. Maybe I should have noticed the signs: his stress, his secrecy, the way he'd been so eager to help after Dad died. Then came the anger, hot and bitter. He'd betrayed me. He'd monitored me for 6 months, stolen from me, lied to me, cheated on me, and tried to take everything my father had built. And beneath it all, a strange, unwelcome relief. The nightmare was over. David was gone. I didn't have to pretend anymore. But that relief came with loneliness so profound it made my chest ache. My phone rang. "Nathaniel." "Hey!" I answered, my voice rough. "Just checking in. You okay?" I laughed bitterly. I don't know what okay means anymore. "That's fair." His voice was gentle. "You've been through hell today." "Nathaniel, I loved him for 7 years." My voice cracked. How did I not see it? How could I be that blind? Rachel, loving someone isn't a weakness. It doesn't make you naive or stupid. It makes you human, and it makes you a good person. He paused. "David's choices are not your fault. He installed the spyware. He lied. He stole. He forged documents. You didn't do any of that. He did. But he's going to prison. His whole life is ruined. He ruined it himself." Nathaniel said firmly, "You didn't make him commit fraud. You defended yourself. That's not something to feel guilty about." I wiped my eyes. "I know, I keep thinking about the man I married. Was he ever real, or was it always a lie?" "Maybe parts of it were real," Nathaniel said quietly. "People are complicated. But the man you thought you knew, he's not the man who tried to steal from you. And you deserve better than that." We talked for a few more minutes before he let me go, reminding me to call if I needed anything. After we hung up, I sat in the silence, feeling unmoored. I got up and wandered to Dad's old desk, the one I'd brought from his house after he died. I'd been meaning to go through it for months, but hadn't found the strength. I opened the top drawer. Inside were papers, old bills, a few photographs of me as a kid, and beneath them, a leather-bound journal. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. Dad's journal. the one he'd kept in his final year. I opened it carefully, flipping through entries about his students, his garden mundane daily life. And then near the end, dated August 15th, 2023, just weeks before he died, I found an entry that made me freeze. I'm worried about Rachel. David's been acting strange lately, stressed, distracted, secretive. He says it's work, but something feels off. I asked Rachel if everything was okay, and she said yes, but I can see the strain in her eyes. I signed the advance designation today. Attorney Miller drafted it. If anything ever happens to me, I want to make sure Rachel has control over her own future. I trust her. She's smart, strong, capable. She'll know how to protect herself. If something goes wrong, if David's stress turns into something worse, I hope she'll be strong enough to fight. I hope she knows she doesn't have to carry burdens that aren't hers. I love you, Rachel. Even when I'm gone, I'm still watching over you. The words blurred as tears spilled down my face. Dad had known. Maybe not the specifics, but he'd sensed something was wrong. He'd protected me the only way he could by making sure I'd have legal standing to fight back. I did it, Dad, I whispered, clutching the journal to my chest. I fought. I protected what you left me. I sat there for a long time, crying not just for my marriage, but for my father, for the life I'd thought I had, for everything I'd lost. Eventually, I stood and walked to the mantel where my wedding ring still sat on my finger. I looked at it, the simple gold band David had slipped onto my hand 7 years ago, promising to love and protect me. Slowly, I pulled it off. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of every lie, every betrayal, every broken promise. I set it gently on the table. This chapter of my life was over. But as I stood there, in the quiet apartment surrounded by the remnants of a marriage that had been built on sand, I realized something. I wasn't broken. I was angry. I was hurt. I was grieving. But I wasn't broken, and tomorrow I would start rebuilding. I didn't know what that would look like yet. I didn't know how long it would take. But I knew one thing for certain: I would survive this, because my father had believed I could, and I wasn't going to let him down. 2 weeks later, I started rebuilding my life, one small step at a time. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand gestures or sudden revelations, just quiet, deliberate choices to move forward. Week 1. I changed every password I had: banking, email, social media, work accounts. I ran Miller's security software again to make sure the keylogger was completely gone. Watching those malicious files get deleted felt like scrubbing away David's fingerprints from my digital life. I closed the joint checking account David and I had shared. The bank representative was sympathetic when I explained I was going through a divorce. She helped me open a new account in my name, only with new account numbers, new debit card, new everything. I contacted a divorce attorney, Linda Morgan, recommended by Nathaniel. She was kind, but matter-of-fact, Oregon was a no-fault divorce state, and given David's criminal charges, the dissolution would likely be straightforward. She filed the petition. I'd be legally single within 6 months. It felt surreal signing those papers. 7 years erased with a signature. Week 2, I met with Sarah Mitchell, a certified financial planner Nathaniel had recommended. She specialized in helping people manage sudden inheritances, lottery winners, accident settlements, bereaved families like me. We sat in her bright plant-filled office in the Pearl District, and I laid out everything: the $125,000 in savings, the $75,000 life insurance payout, the $380,000 house in Laurelhurst. "You have options," Sarah said, pulling up a spreadsheet. "The key is making choices that honor your father's intentions while protecting your future." We built a plan: $125,000 savings split between a high-yield savings account, $50,000 emergency fund, and low-risk index funds, $75,000 long-term growth, $75,000 insurance, fully liquid emergency fund enough to cover a year of living expenses if needed, $380,000 house, keep it, move into it. It was paid off, structurally sound, and full of memories I wasn't ready to let go of yet. "What about your current apartment?" Sarah asked. "I'm breaking the lease. I can't stay there anymore." I didn't elaborate. She understood. Before I left, I made one more decision. I want to donate $10,000 to the Oregon Coalition Against Domestic Violence, in my father's name. Sarah nodded, her expression softening. That's a beautiful way to honor him. I wrote the check that afternoon. It felt right using the money David had tried to steal to help other people escape situations like mine. Week 2, Part 2. I met Jessica at a coffee shop on Hawthorne Boulevard, our old haunt from college. I hadn't seen her in months. After Dad died, I'd withdrawn from everyone, too exhausted and grief-stricken to maintain friendships. And then the conservatorship fight had consumed me entirely. "Hey, stranger," she said when I walked in, pulling me into a fierce hug. We sat by the window, lattes in hand, and I told her everything. Not the sanitized version, the whole ugly truth. The spyware, the affair, the fake psychological report, the courtroom breakdown. Jessica listened without interrupting, her eyes widening at each new revelation. "Jesus, Rachel," she breathed when I finished. I knew things were bad, but I had no idea. "I didn't either," I said quietly. Not until it was almost too late. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "But you fought. You won." "I survived," I corrected. "I'm not sure winning is the right word." "You're here. You're safe. Your money is yours. He's in jail." Jessica's grip tightened. "That's a win, Rachel. Maybe not the one you wanted, but it's a win." For the first time in months, I felt myself smile, a real smile, not the polite mask I'd been wearing. "Welcome back," Jessica said softly. "Thanks for waiting," I replied. Week 2, Part 3. Nathaniel called with updates. "The Multnomah County DA formally indicted David yesterday," he said. 6 felony counts: attempted theft, forgery, perjury, identity theft, computer crime, and fraud upon the court. "When's the trial?" "Probably spring 2025. Criminal cases move slower than civil. But Rachel, he's not getting out before then. Bail was set at $450,000. He can't pay it. He's staying in the county detention center." I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that he couldn't come near me. Sadness that it had come to this. "How's he doing?" I asked, then immediately regretted it. Nathaniel hesitated. "His attorney says he's struggling, isolated, depressed. But Rachel, that's not your responsibility." "I know. I mean it. You don't owe him sympathy. You don't owe him forgiveness. You owe him nothing." "I know," I repeated more firmly this time. Nathaniel also told me about Elena. She'd closed her salon and moved back to New Mexico to live with her family. Before she left, she'd sent me a letter. I'd opened it with trembling hands. "Dear Rachel, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to try. I'm so sorry. I believed David's lies. I thought I was part of something real. I didn't know he was stealing from you, hurting you, destroying your life. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I never meant to be part of this, and I hope you can rebuild everything he tried to take from you. I'm sorry. Elena." I wrote back, "Elena, I don't hate you. You were a victim too, just in a different way. David lied to both of us. I hope you find peace, and I hope you're more careful with your trust in the future. I know I will be. Rachel." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was closure. Week 2. Final day. On a gray Sunday afternoon, I drove to Riverview Cemetery in southwest Portland. Dad's grave was under a sprawling oak tree. The headstone simple: Michael James Hayes, 1956 to 2023, beloved father teacher. Friend, I knelt and placed a bouquet of violets, his favorite, on the grass. "Hey, Dad," I whispered, my voice catching. "I did it. I fought. I protected what you left me." The wind rustled through the oak leaves. "I know you were worried about me, about David. I found your journal. You saw something was wrong, didn't you? And you made sure I'd be okay." Tears slipped down my cheeks. "I wish you were here. I wish I could ask you what to do next. But I think I know. You'd tell me to keep going. To build something good with what you left me. To live a life that makes you proud." I touched the headstone. "I'm going to try, Dad. I'm going to move into the house you built. I'm going to use the money wisely. I'm going to help other people who've been hurt the way I was, and I'm going to be okay. I promise. I sat there for a long time, listening to the wind, feeling the late afternoon sun on my face. When I finally stood to leave, I felt lighter, not happy, not healed, but hopeful. I turned and walked back to my car, the cemetery path stretching ahead of me. Behind me, the past. Ahead, a future I would build myself. A future that was mine. In late November 2024, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my father's house in Laurelhurst, the house that was now truly mine. The dining room glowed with warm light from the chandelier Dad had installed himself 20 years ago. The table was set with mismatched plates, some from his collection, some I'd bought new, and the scent of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and pumpkin pie filled the air. It was the first holiday I'd hosted in this house. The first Thanksgiving without Dad. The first Thanksgiving without David. But I wasn't alone. Nathaniel arrived first, carrying a bottle of Oregon Pinot Noir and a bouquet of sunflowers. "For the hostess," he said with a slight smile. Jessica came next, bringing homemade cranberry sauce and her infectious energy. "This place looks amazing, Rach. You've really made it yours." Sarah Mitchell. My financial advisor arrived with a pecan pie and warm hugs. "I'm so proud of how far you've come." And finally, Rebecca Martinez, the private investigator who'd helped expose David's lies, showed up with artisan bread from a local bakery. "Hope you don't mind an extra guest," she said. "Are you kidding your family now?" I replied. We gathered around the table as the evening light faded outside the house, warm and alive in a way it hadn't been in months. Before we ate, I raised my glass. "I want to share some news first. Updates really on everything." Nathaniel nodded encouragingly. "David accepted a plea deal last week," I said. 5 years at Oregon State Penitentiary, plus 3 years of probation. He pled guilty to attempted theft, forgery, and computer crime. He'll be eligible for release in 2029. Jessica reached over and squeezed my hand. "He also has to pay $45,000 in restitution to cover my legal fees. It won't erase what he did, but it's something." I paused. "And the divorce is final. As of October 15th, I'm legally single." Sarah raised her glass. "To freedom. To freedom," we echoed. "What about Morrison?" Rebecca asked. "The Oregon State Bar suspended his license for 2 years. He has to pay a $20,000 fine and complete ethics retraining before he can practice again. He's appealing, but Nathaniel says it probably won't go anywhere." Nathaniel nodded. "He violated too many rules. He's lucky he wasn't disbarred." I took a breath, and I made a decision about how I want to move forward. I'm volunteering with the Oregon Elder Justice Coalition, helping victims of financial exploitation, especially when it happens within families. Jessica's eyes lit up. "Rachel, that's incredible. It feels right," I said quietly. "Dad spent his life teaching people. This feels like a way to honor that, helping people protect themselves the way he tried to protect me." Nathaniel smiled. "Michael would be very proud." We ate, talked, laughed. For the first time in over a year, I felt light. After dinner, as we cleared plates and refilled glasses, Jessica proposed a toast. "I want to go around the table," she said. "Everyone say one thing they're grateful for this year." Nathaniel went first, swirling his wine thoughtfully. "I'm grateful I got to work with someone as brave as Rachel. Cases like this remind me why I became a lawyer, to fight for people who deserve justice." Sarah smiled. "I'm grateful I got to witness resilience. Rachel, watching you rebuild your life from the ground up has been one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen." Rebecca leaned back in her chair. "I'm grateful I do work that matters. Too many people get away with fraud because no one's willing to dig deep enough. This case, we dug, and we won." Jessica's voice softened. "I'm grateful my best friend came back to me. For a while, I thought I'd lost you, Rach. I'm so glad I was wrong." Finally, it was my turn. I looked around the table at these people who'd fought for me, supported me, believed in me when I'd barely believed in myself. "I'm grateful for second chances," I began. "And for the people who fought to give me mine, Nathaniel, Jessica, Rebecca, Sarah. I'm grateful for my father who trusted me even when I didn't trust myself." My voice wavered. A year ago, I lost my dad. 6 months ago, I lost my husband, or rather, I realized the man I thought I'd married never really existed. I wiped my eyes. But I didn't lose myself. That's the most important thing. I could have. David tried to take everything, my money, my autonomy, my sanity, but I fought back, and I won. I raised my glass higher. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I'm stronger, I'm wiser, I'm more careful with my trust, but I'm also more grateful for the people who deserve it. Everyone raised their glasses. To second chances, Nathaniel said. To resilience, Sarah added. To truth, Rebecca said firmly. To friendship, Jessica whispered. We clinked glasses and the sound rang out like a bell. After dessert, we moved to the living room. Jessica built a fire in the stone fireplace Dad had laid himself. We sat on couches and chairs talking late into the night about everything and nothing, past and future grief and hope. At one point, Sarah asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you ever think about David, wonder how he's doing? I considered it carefully. Sometimes. Not as much as I used to. Mostly, I just feel tired and sad. Not angry anymore, just sad that he made the choices he did. Do you think you'll ever forgive him? Jessica asked gently. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe someday. But forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. I can forgive him for being desperate, for making terrible choices, but I'll never forget what he did, and I'll never let him back into my life. Nathaniel nodded approvingly. That's healthy. Forgiveness is for you, not for him. Rebecca leaned forward. For what it's worth, I've worked a lot of cases like this. The fact that you're here in this house hosting Thanksgiving with people who love you, that's not common. Most victims stay trapped financially, emotionally, legally. You broke free. That takes guts. It took help, I corrected. I couldn't have done it alone. But you did the hardest part, Sarah said. You asked for help. You fought. You didn't give up. I looked around the room at the firelight dancing on the walls Dad had painted, at the people who'd become my chosen family, at the life I was slowly, carefully rebuilding. I know life won't always be easy, I said quietly. There will be hard days. Days I miss my dad. Days I wonder what my marriage could have been if David had made different choices. But I survived the worst storm of my life. And if I can survive that, I can survive anything. Jessica raised her glass one more time. To surviving and to thriving. To thriving, we all echoed. As the night wore on and my guests began to leave, each one hugged me tightly. Call me if you need anything, Nathaniel said. Anytime. Brunch next week, Jessica insisted. No excuses. We'll review your portfolio in January, Sarah promised. Rebecca shook my hand firmly. Keep fighting the good fight. When they were gone, I stood alone in the quiet house, looking at the remnants of the evening, empty wine glasses, crumpled napkins, the warm glow of the dying fire. I walked to the mantel where I'd placed a photo of Dad, one from his last birthday, smiling in his garden dirt on his hands and joy in his eyes. We did it, Dad, I whispered. I protected what you left me, and I'm going to use it to help other people, just like you would have wanted. I touched the frame gently. Outside, the November rain began to fall, soft, steady, cleansing. I turned off the lights, locked the doors, and climbed the stairs to the bedroom that had been Dad's and was now mine. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in this house, my house. I'd go to work, meet with my volunteer coordinator, have brunch with Jessica. I'd keep building the life I deserved. Because I'd learned something in the past year. You can lose your father. You can lose your marriage. You can lose the future you thought you'd have. But as long as you don't lose yourself, you can rebuild. And sometimes what you rebuild is even stronger than what you lost. I crawled into bed, pulled the quilt up, the one Dad's mother had made, passed down through generations, and closed my eyes. For the first time in over a year, I slept soundly. No nightmares. No fear, no anger, just peace. And to you listening to this story, remember this family betrayal isn't something you see coming. It happens in quiet moments, hidden behind I love you and I'm protecting you. My husband didn't steal from me overnight. He spent 6 months installing spyware, forging documents, planning his family revenge against the inheritance my father worked 40 years to build. I thought trusting family meant never asking questions. I was wrong. God gave me 3 signs I ignored my father's worry in his journal. David's sudden helpfulness after Dad died. That gut feeling something was off. Don't be like me. When God whispers warnings through your instincts, through loved ones, through circumstances, listen. I nearly lost everything because I confused blind trust with faith. Family betrayal cuts deepest because it comes from those we're taught to trust without question. But here's what I learned. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. Asking for proof isn't suspicion, it's wisdom. God didn't abandon me when my marriage collapsed. He'd already prepared my escape route through my father's advanced designation, through Nathaniel's expertise, through every piece of evidence that saved me. Sometimes God's protection looks like a locked bank account at 2:47 a.m. My advice, never sacrifice your financial independence for anyone. Not your spouse, not family, not love. Keep separate accounts. Verify documents, trust but verify. And when someone shows you who they really are through their actions, believe them. Family revenge doesn't have to mean retaliation. Mine was rebuilding, thriving, helping others avoid my mistakes. That's the best revenge, refusing to stay broken. If this story resonated with you, or if you've faced your own family betrayal, share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to hear more real-life stories of survival and justice. Your story matters. Thank you for listening to the very end. Disclaimer. Upcoming stories contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, please choose something more suitable.